We all know that sweaty gamer who spends 25 hours a day grinding an online game. It's fine as long as it's not League of Legends, honestly. This is the story of one such guy, Kanishi, who gets Isekai'd and starts a new game plus mode in this new world with hard difficulty. As if life wasn't already on hard mode for a nerd like him and you guys. The story starts with MC, a sweaty hardcore gamer whose favorite game is shutting down. He has spent the past 3 years restlessly grinding in this game. As he reflects on the experience, he feels a profound sense of dissatisfaction, finding the journey tedious and ultimately unrewarding because it failed to provide a real challenge for his skills. MC yearns for an experience far more demanding, a game so complex and brutal that it might take an entire decade to master. He should have tried Counter-Strike on Russian servers. He is searching for a true trial of intellect and grit, rather than a simple test of endurance or repetitive grinding. Driven by this desire, MC scours the internet for his next obsession. After dismissing countless games that fail to spark his interest, his computer begins to malfunction. That's why you shouldn't click on the hot singles in your area ads. The monitor flickers violently before displaying cryptic text that invites him to join an endless game set within a sprawling fantasy realm filled with magic. Intrigued by the promise of a world without boundaries, MC feels a burst of adrenaline and clicks the link without hesitation. He is immediately greeted with the difficulty settings. While standard choices like easy and hard modes appear on the screen, his attention is captured by a hidden option at the very bottom, Hell Mode. Having never encountered such a setting in any previous game, his eyes begin sparkling, sensing that he has finally found the challenge he craved. Did he try the challenge of touching grass? Anyways, he selects the difficulty and chooses the Summoner class before hitting the start button. In an instant, a blinding light erupts from the display, and MC is physically pulled into the digital void. Soon he regains consciousness not as a player but as a newborn infant in a foreign world, born into North Korea. How's that for a challenge? Just kidding. He's born within the humble and difficult lifestyle of a serf family. As he regains consciousness, a man lifts him up and gives him the name Alan. Remarkably, MC is not distressed by this sudden transformation. In his former life, he was a 35-year-old man trapped in a stagnant, low-paying job with no prospects for advancement. Why did he wish for Hell Mode? Bro was already living it, but to him, this reincarnation represents a rare opportunity for a total reset and a chance to build a life of significance. Although he is currently a 1-year-old who lacks the physical ability to speak, his cognitive faculties remain fully intact. He can process complex thoughts, monitor his surroundings, and understand the local inhabitants perfectly. He is particularly surprised to find that the common tongue in this mysterious land is Japanese, allowing him to navigate the social landscape with ease. MC's family resides in a fledgling frontier village where the residents must provide taxes to a feudal lord in exchange for the opportunity to farm the untamed land. The settlement is so primitive and new that it has not even been granted a formal name. MC's father, Rodin, is a diligent and protective provider whom MC estimates to be roughly 20 years old. His mother, Deja, appears to be in her late teens and shows deep affection for her husband. Observing the warmth and closeness between his parents, MC concludes that he will likely have younger brothers or sisters joining the family soon. One evening, after being tucked away for the night, MC lies in the darkness and contemplates his potential abilities as a summoner. Eager to test the mechanics of this new reality, he attempts to summon a status window to review his attributes. However, his expectations are shattered when a massive, ancient-looking book suddenly manifests and hovers in the air above his crib. Startled by the physical weight and presence of it, MC lets out a sharp cry of alarm. The sudden noise immediately alerts his parents. Realizing that he cannot afford to let them discover his magical abilities so soon, MC panics and mentally commands the floating book to vanish just as they enter the room. Ronan and Deja find nothing unusual and assume their son was simply reacting to a dream. Relieved that there is no danger, they quietly exit the room, leaving MC alone to wonder about the mysterious book he has just unlocked. Once they are gone, MC carefully brings the book back out again. He soon learns that the floating book is actually a grimoire that contains all the details about his stats and abilities. As he reads through it, he confirms that he really is a summoner, just like the class he chose in the game. The book explains that he can summon creatures, but because of his young age, he is currently limited to summoning only insects and beasts. Even so, MC feels extremely excited. He wants to summon something right away, so he tries summoning an insect. However, no matter how many times he tries, nothing happens at all. After several failed attempts, MC forces himself to calm down and think carefully. He remembers another skill listed in the grimoire and decides to try using his Create skill first. When he activates it, something finally happens. A crafting card for an insect appears right in front of him. Now that he has the crafting card, he prepares to summon the insect properly. Just as he is about to do it, his mother comes in to check on him. MC reacts instantly, lying back down and pretending to be asleep. Even after his mother leaves the room, he notices that he is suddenly very tired. His eyelids feel heavy, and he realizes that forcing himself to stay awake is pointless. Deciding it is better to rest, he chooses to go to sleep and try summoning the next morning again. The following morning, as the first rays of dawn filtered through the modest cracks of their family home, MC waited with the calculated patience of a veteran strategist for the precise moment his parents' attention wavered. The second he was certain he was alone, he manifested the grimoire. With a surge of mental effort and a flicker of arcane light, he attempted the ritual again. In a sudden jarring blur of green, a gargantuan grasshopper far larger and more imposing than any common insect materialized from the ether. Before MC could even register the success of the summon, the creature launched itself with explosive force, its serrated legs and alien thorax colliding directly with his face. Panicked and momentarily blinded by the sudden impact, MC scrambled to maintain his composure. He tried to exert his will, shouting mental and verbal commands for the creature to submit and obey his authority. To his frustration, the grasshopper proved to be totally unhinged. With a flick of its powerful hind legs, it disregarded him entirely, hopping across the room with a chaotic energy that left MC in shambles. Seeking answers, he quickly shifted through the pages of the grimoire, searching for some hidden clause or mechanic he had overlooked. Within the book's luminous depths, he found the creature's attributes. The grimoire stated a vital instruction: the bond could only be solidified if the summon was christened. After a moment of deep deliberation, he settled on the name Dina. The instant the name was finalized, a strange sensation washed over him. He could feel his own physical limits expanding. He was leveling up his stats simply by having Dina active in the world. However, his moment of quiet celebration was short-lived. The heavy footsteps announced his mother's arrival. I guess the grasshopper isn't the only thing he summoned. The second she stepped into the room, her eyes locked onto the twitching form of the giant insect. Paralyzed by an ancient visceral phobia of all things multi-legged, she reacted with the frantic lethal instinct of a cornered predator. Before MC could utter a word of protest or explanation, she brought her foot down with crushing finality. With a sickening crunch, the magical bond was severed and Dina was violently returned to the void from which she came. Unbothered by the tragic loss of his first summon, MC spent the subsequent days in a state of hyper-focused experimentation. He tinkered with his mana, tested various mental anchors, and pushed the boundaries of his emerging skill set. His persistence eventually yielded a second success, this time in the form of a twitching mouse. He named the creature Misi, hoping for a more cooperative partner. Yet it quickly became apparent that Misi possessed the same frustratingly low intelligence that had plagued Dina. The rodent was a creature of pure impulse, ignoring MC's complex directives to sniff at dust motes or scratch at the floorboards. The one saving grace was a specific skill listed in the grimoire titled Scurry. This ability allowed Musi to transform into a blur of gray motion, traversing the room at speeds that defied the natural laws of biology. While the mouse still refused to perform complex tasks, it would at least trigger its high-speed dash whenever MC focused on its intent, providing a small glimmer of hope that his summons were not entirely useless. MC dedicated the remainder of the afternoon to an exhaustive study of the grimoire. He pored over the cryptic text until his eyes burned, analyzing every syllable for a hint on how to bridge the communication gap between summoner and beast. He brainstormed endlessly, theorizing about hidden leveling requirements or environmental conditions that might allow him to command more formidable albahones or other legendary monsters. Yet, despite his high-level gamer intellect, the book remained an enigma. The lack of clear answers left him frustrated, his mind racing in circles around a puzzle he wasn't yet strong enough to solve. The atmosphere of the day shifted dramatically late that afternoon when his father, Rodin, returned from the wilderness. He was a sight to behold. His garments were heavily splattered with the dark, copper-scented blood of the hunt, bearing witness to a struggle of epic proportions. With the booming voice of a man who had stared death in the face and won, Rodin announced his triumph over a massive, prehistoric-looking boar. He painted a vivid, terrifying picture of the beast's sheer scale and the danger it posed to the village, his eyes shining with the pride of a provider. When he asked MC if he wished to witness the fallen titan for himself, MC's heart hammered against his ribs in excitement. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to see a true high-ranking monster of this world with his own eyes. For the first time in his new life, MC crossed the threshold of the house and stepped out into the wider world. The experience was overwhelming. The air was sharper, the colors more vivid than any digital screen could ever replicate. As they walked, Ronan paused to point toward the horizon, where a majestic flock of birds glided across the sky in a perfect V formation. These were the albahones, migrating north to escape the encroaching chill of autumn. In a moment of rare tenderness, Ronan revealed that MC had been named in honor of these resilient, noble travelers. After a trek that felt like an eternity to MC's small legs, they reached the clearing where the harvesting of the boar was underway. A group of rugged men was already deep in the visceral work of processing the colossal carcass. Initially, MC was swept away by a wave of pure, unadulterated adrenaline at the sight. But as he stood in the shadow of the dead beast, the true scale of the monster began to sink in. This was not a game sprite. This was a mountain of muscle, tusks, and thick hide that could have pulverized a human being in a heartbeat. The thrill of the hunt was rapidly replaced by a cold, sobering dread. MC looked at his small infant hands and realized with terrifying clarity that his current level of power was insignificant. If he were to face an albahones or a boar of this rank in open combat now, he wouldn't just lose, he would be obliterated. As he stood lost in these dark reflections, a neighboring hunter named Jera approached them. Jera, a man whose face was etched with the scars of a dozen seasons, clapped Ronan on the shoulder, his voice loud with genuine respect. The surrounding villagers joined in, their cheers echoing through the trees as they celebrated the kill that would keep their families fed through the coming months. Then came the moment of introduction. Ronan presented his son to Jera with a quiet sense of pride. When MC looked up and greeted the seasoned hunter with a level of poise, vocabulary, and refined manners that should have been impossible for a one-year-old, Jera was struck dumb. The veteran woodsman stood there, mouth agape, staring at the child as if he were seeing a ghost or a god. The sheer anomaly of MC's intelligence in such a tiny frame left the man completely speechless, marking the first time the world truly took notice of the extraordinary being that had been reborn in their midst. Putting that aside, MC asks Jera how strong a boar actually is. Jera explains that boars are naturally C-rank monsters and that it usually takes around 20 people working together to bring just one of them down. Hearing this, Alan quietly takes note of the information. He realizes that this gives him a clear benchmark for what kind of strength exists in this world and what he might have to face in the future. Approximately 10 months later, MC is greeted by exhilarating news regarding his progression. He discovers that he has successfully reached the second level of his summoner class, a milestone that grants him the capability to generate G-rank creature cards. This advancement represents a significant leap forward in his journey, further enhanced by the acquisition of a brand new skill that allows him to fuse his summoned entities together. Perhaps the most beneficial aspect of this level up is the doubling of his inventory capacity. This expansion means he can now store twice as many utility buffs as he could previously, a change that exponentially increases his potential combat effectiveness and overall utility. That evening, after finishing his meal, MC is brimming with anticipation, eager to experiment with his newly acquired level's skill and storage space. He specifically prepares to initiate the fusion technique for the very first time. However, his high spirits are quickly dampened by a wave of disappointment when he discovers that the fusion process refuses to work on his cards. Despite having a completely full pool of mana, and no matter how meticulously he follows the required steps or exerts his will, the fusion remains dormant. While the failure is frustrating, MC maintains a level head, rationalizing that his current physical youth and lack of raw power are likely the primary barriers to mastering such a complex ability. As more time elapses and MC reaches the age of 3, his path as a summoner begins to show undeniable signs of development. Through persistent trial and error and dedicated practice, he finally achieves success with his fusion technique, combining several cards into a superior form. This breakthrough allows him to create a bird card, and the avian creature he summons from it is named Chappie. Chappie possesses a unique talent for voice mimicry, enabling him to perfectly replicate any phrase MC utters. Upon hearing the bird mirror his own voice with such precision, MC immediately identifies the strategic advantages of such a trait. He envisions utilizing this mimicry to baffle his enemies, draw unsuspecting albahones into elaborate traps, or provide essential distractions during the chaos of a confrontation. Reflecting on his progress, MC feels a deep sense of satisfaction regarding the complexity of this new world. He candidly admits to himself that this reality represents the absolute pinnacle of hardcore gaming, far surpassing the depth and challenge of any virtual experience he had in his previous life. By mid-afternoon, one of MC's local friends, a young girl named Krina, arrives at his home for a scheduled playdate. In keeping with their routine, they engage in a game of pretend knights, using wooden sticks as makeshift swords. Initially, MC underestimates his opponent, assuming that his mental maturity and status as a gamer would lead to an easy victory. To his shock, however, Krina proves to be remarkably fast and agile. She maneuvers with surprising grace, effortlessly evading his strikes and launching counterattacks before he can even reset his stance. MC finds himself struggling to match her frantic pace, and before he can adapt his strategy, he is soundly defeated. By the end of the session, MC is physically exhausted and nursing a bruised ego from the loss. Yet rather than wallowing in discouragement, he makes a silent vow to refine his skills and return much stronger for their next encounter. That night, the household is filled with joy as Deja reveals the news of her pregnancy. Upon hearing this, MC expresses his desire to assist his father with the potato harvest, noting that his mother will need to rest more. Internally, MC is confident in his ability to handle the grueling physical labor because his stats provide him with the endurance of a fully grown man. Unaware of his secret abilities, his parents gently decline his offer. They insist that a child of his age should spend his time playing and enjoying his youth. They encourage him to continue his friendship with Krina, as they have seen how much he enjoys their mock battles. Furthermore, they mention their high expectations for MC's upcoming appraisal ceremony. Confused by the term, MC listens as Deja explains that upon turning 5, every child undergoes a divine ritual to reveal their inherent talent. They hold on to the hope that MC will be granted a prestigious talent, one capable of elevating the entire family out of their status as serfs. A few months later, during the peak of winter, MC commits a rare oversight by forgetting to dismiss an insect summon named Dina. His mother suddenly spots the creature, and in her startled state, slips and falls. When Rodin rushes to her aid, Disha informs him that the shock has induced labor. Fortunately, Krina is nearby for another playdate, and Rodin quickly sends her to fetch her parents, who possess the necessary experience to assist in a birth. Shortly thereafter, Jera and his wife Matilda arrive to take control of the situation. Matilda assumes a leadership role, ordering all the men out of the house to ensure a private and focused environment for the delivery. After a long night of waiting, the boys wake up to the sound of a newborn's cries, signaling a safe arrival. Matilda asks Rodin to provide a name for his new son, and he chooses the name Mash. While Deja initially loves the name, she jokingly questions whether it was inspired by a monster. Rodin sheepishly admits it was, leading to a moment of shared laughter among the group. Observing this warm scene, MC reflects on his circumstances. He realizes he never fully grasped the reason for his reincarnation, but beyond his wish for a challenging game, he remembers the emptiness of his previous life and feels no regret in leaving it behind. In this world, he feels a sense of true freedom and limitless potential. Most importantly, he realizes this family is the most valuable part of his existence. Though the path is currently unclear, MC makes a solemn private promise. He will do whatever is necessary to liberate his family from the burdens of being serfs. By the time MC turns 5, his father takes him for a walk through a vibrant flower field to discuss the appraisal ceremony in detail. Ronan explains that this ritual is a mandatory rite of passage for every child in the village. A discovered talent could serve as a golden ticket for the family to escape their social standing. However, he warns MC that the competition is fierce, given their village's high population density. Along the way, they encounter Krina and her father, and the four of them travel together to a neighboring commoner village. Upon arrival, MC is taken aback by the appearance of the commoners, who are well-groomed and dressed in high-quality fabrics that far outshine his own humble attire. The ceremony begins as the priests open the massive doors, calling for the common people to show their reverence to Elmia, the god of creation. The priests emphasize that heroes can emerge from any background, even from the lowest serfs. MC recognizes the truth in this, recalling from his previous life that the most powerful classes often require a humble start. He realizes this game rule is a fundamental law of this world. As the participants move inside, MC spots a grand statue of Elmia at the center of the hall. The appraisals begin with the village chief's son, Pelmus, whose touch on the crystal ball reveals a merchant talent. His father celebrates wildly, relieved that his son has a viable future. Suddenly, MC's grimoire manifests before him, visible only to his eyes, and begins recording numerical values for the attributes being displayed. This allows MC to see stats as clear data rather than vague impressions. As the ceremony continues, many children celebrate while others leave in disappointment. Dogora is the next to step up, and the crystal identifies him as an axe user, prompting a joyous celebration with his father. Finally, only MC and Krina remain. Krina approaches the crystal with high hopes, and her touch triggers a magnificent explosion of light. The priests are stunned to announce that she possesses the talent of a sword lord, one of the rarest and most powerful vocations in existence. While her father is ecstatic at the prospect of escaping poverty, Krina herself seems disappointed, as she had hoped for a simpler life as a standard swordsman. MC, however, is not shocked, having always sensed her latent power. He feels a surge of confidence as he approaches the crystal, hoping his parents will finally see his status as a summoner. He places his hand on the orb, and a violent, blinding light erupts, physically throwing him backward onto the ground. Ronan rushes to the priest, desperate to know if his son has awakened an incredible, unique talent, only to be met with a crushing announcement. MC has been judged to have no talent at all. Ronan does not look upset in the slightest. Instead, he calmly holds MC by the shoulders and tells him that it is time for them to go home. The two of them head back home afterward, where MC's little brother, Mash, is already waiting to give them a warm and cheerful welcome. Later that night, Ronan sits down with MC and tells him not to feel bad about me not having a talent, explaining that nothing like that would ever change how much they love him. Even so, MC still feels a little disappointed about the fact that he did not receive a talent of his own. Despite that, he remains grateful and happy that he was born into such a caring and loving family. Later that night, MC lies awake in bed with his grimoire open in front of him. As he looks through it again, he notices that every single one of his attributes is listed as E rank. At the very least, today helped him realize one important thing. He is the only person in this world playing on Hell Mode. MC assumes that the ranking system most likely reflects how much growth a person can expect when they level up. Because of that, he believes the reason all of his abilities are E rank is due to him choosing the Hell Mode difficulty, which probably reduces his progress to 1/100th of what it is normally supposed to be. That can only mean the stats shown in the grimoire are just a small fraction of his true potential. MC realizes that a difficulty like this is usually where most people would quit, but not him. He is on a mission to prove that he is capable of conquering any hardcore game he chooses to face. The next day, MC and his family head over to Krina's house to celebrate her Sword Lord talent. Along the way, MC cannot help but notice that his father seems upset about something, even though he clearly does not want to talk about it. That bad mood follows Rona all the way to Krina's house. When it is time for everyone to start drinking together, Roden and Jera begin bickering over something completely pointless. MC watches them argue and wonders if his father's attitude could be caused by jealousy over Krina becoming a sword lord. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that his father is not that petty a person. The argument continues to escalate as Roden and Jera shout back and forth at each other. Suddenly, Jera drops a bombshell, revealing that Roden once said he wanted to cut all ties with their family. Everyone who hears this is left completely shocked. Roden admits that it is true, but explains that it is not because he wants to. He says that Karina's talent is 1 in a million, and could even put her on the path to becoming a noble. Because of that, he believes they should not risk her future by continuing to associate with serfs like them. Even after that explanation, the two continue arguing for a while longer until their wives finally step in and slap some sense into them. Matilda and Jera then explain the truth, revealing that all 4 of them are childhood friends who grew up together in the same village. Apparently, Jera and Roden have always been meatheads who are constantly looking for excuses to fight each other. Though becoming fathers managed to calm them down a little, reminiscing about old memories helps everyone cool off. They spend the rest of the night enjoying themselves and sharing liquor together. The following dawn, the atmosphere within the settlement was thick with anticipation as the whispers regarding Krina's extraordinary revelation at the appraisal ceremony rippled through the frontier like wildfire. These rumors, vibrating with the promise of a legendary destiny, moved with such velocity that they reached the ears of the regional authorities far sooner than anyone had anticipated. Before the morning dew had even evaporated from the flower fields, it became known that the prestigious Order of Knights was already mobilizing a specialized delegation to investigate the veracity of these claims in person. The weight of royal interest descended upon the nameless village with a sudden, heavy gravity. Shortly thereafter, the rhythmic thundering of hooves announced the arrival of the knights. They crested the hill on magnificent armored warhorses, their polished breastplates reflecting the sunlight with a blinding brilliance that made the humble serfs squint in awe. As the dust settled from their arrival, Krina and her father Jera hurried forward to present themselves to the knight commander. Watching from a safe distance, MC stood in contemplative silence, his mind racing through the potential outcomes of this encounter. He began to realize with a bittersweet clarity that if Krina truly was the prodigy they claimed, her life in the village was effectively over. She would eventually be swept away to the capital to become a champion of the realm, a path that was undeniably hers to walk. Even as he recognized the necessity of her departure, MC felt a pang of genuine sorrow, admitting to himself that the quiet days of their childhood duels would be sorely missed once she was gone. The Knight Commander, a man of stern countenance and rigid military bearing, engaged Jera in a tense dialogue that quickly took a dark and cynical turn. Despite the official reports from the priests, the commander remained deeply skeptical, finding it mathematically improbable that a peasant child from a remote borderland could possess a talent as rare as a sword lord. His skepticism eventually curdled into a harsh and dangerous ultimatum. He said the crystal ball evidence was insufficient evidence, and that they may have conspired to fabricate the result for personal gain. Consequently, he decreed that Krina must prove her worth through a live combat trial against the vice captain of the order. To raise the stakes to a terrifying level, he announced that should she fail to manifest the prowess of a sword lord, she would be executed immediately on the spot, as the act of deceiving the crown regarding one's divine talent was a capital offense punishable by death. Jera's face paled, and he immediately erupted in a protective fury, vehemently refusing to subject his daughter to such madness. He could not fathom the cruelty of a world where a seasoned, battle-hardened adult like the vice captain would be unleashed upon a 5-year-old child under the threat of the executioner's blade. MC, watching the scene unfold, felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He shared Jera's outrage and disgust at the knight's tyranny, yet he was acutely aware of his own powerlessness. As a child without a recognized talent, there was nothing he could do to intervene against the armed might of the state. However, Krina's reaction was entirely different. Her eyes were not fixed on the grim faces of the knights or the looming threat of death, but rather on the exquisite practice sword she had been offered for the duel. To her, the weapon was a thing of beauty, shiny, BMC'd, and far superior to the wooden sticks they usually played with. Driven by a pure, childlike excitement for the art of the sword, she accepted the challenge without a moment's hesitation. She looked back at her trembling father and told him quite simply not to worry. A display of confidence that left Jera speechless and utterly stunned by the sheer bravery or perhaps the innocent ignorance of his daughter. With the term set, the clearing was transformed into a makeshift arena for the duel between Krina and the vice captain, a man named LeBron. As the match began, the initial exchange was surprisingly BMC'd, with Krina's natural instincts allowing her to parry the first few exploratory probes from the knight. However, the gap in physical maturity soon became apparent. LeBron, seeking to end the farce quickly, exerted his overwhelming adult strength, catching Krina in a heavy exchange and slamming her small frame into a nearby stone wall with a sickening thud. Jera let out a choked cry and tried to rush into the fray to save his child, but he was instantly restrained by the other knights who held him back with cold, mechanical indifference. At that moment, the Knight Commander turned his head away, believing he was about to witness the pathetic end of a fraudulent claim. To the absolute shock of every witness present, Krina did not stay down. She rose from the dirt, her small hands tightening around the hilt of her blade as a faint, ethereal blue aura began to shimmer around her body, the unmistakable sign of a sword lord's man awakening. She didn't just move, she exploded into motion, charging at LeBron with a ferocity that defied the laws of nature. She unleashed a relentless barrage of sword slashes that were 10 times faster and more powerful than her previous efforts. The air hummed with the sound of her steel as she drove the vice captain back, blow after blow. LeBron, now fighting for his own life, struggled desperately to keep up with the blurring speed of the child. Before he could even comprehend the shift in momentum, Krina delivered a strike of such concentrated power that his own sword was sliced clean in half. The Knight Commander, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, immediately bellowed an order to terminate the duel. LeBron stood frozen in the center of the clearing, staring at the shattered remains of his weapon in complete disbelief. He was a 24-year-old elite warrior, yet he had been utterly dismantled by a girl who had only just reached her 5th birthday. The silence that followed was broken by a roar of approval from the villagers, who erupted into cheers for their young champion. Jera, his heart nearly bursting with a mixture of relief and staggering pride, watched as his daughter stood victorious, having overcome impossible odds and the threat of the gallows in a single brilliant display of talent. Shortly after the dust had settled, the commander approached Jera with a completely transformed demeanor. The arrogance and suspicion had vanished, replaced by the somber respect one affords a parent of a national asset. He declared that there was no longer any shadow of a doubt. Krina was indeed a sword lord. He requested a formal audience with Jera to discuss the girl's future and the responsibilities that now rested upon her shoulders. Though Jera's heart still burned with resentment over the brutal trial his daughter had endured, he recognized the necessity of the conversation and agreed to speak. The group adjourned to the village chief's residence, where a lavish dinner had been prepared to facilitate the negotiations. During the meal, the commander introduced himself formally as Zenov and revealed that the Supreme Lord of the province had dispatched him directly to verify the existence of this new legend. With the verification complete, Zenov announced a decree from the Lord that would forever change the history of their land. Originally, the developing settlement was to be named after the village chief, as per tradition, but the emergence of a sword lord had rendered that plan obsolete. To honor the girl who would one day be the kingdom's greatest shield, the lord had officially christened the settlement Krina Village. Zenov then turned to Jera and offered a sincere apology for the harshness of the earlier combat trial, acknowledging that his duty to the crown had forced him to be more ruthless than he would have liked. Jera, being a man of a practical nature and not one to harbor long-term grudges, accepted the apology and allowed the tension to dissipate. Zenov advised Jera to continue raising Krina as he always had, allowing her to grow up in the village for a few more years. However, he explained that once she reached the age of 12, her childhood would officially end. She would be escorted to the Royal Academy in the capital to receive a world-class education and fully master the terrifying potential of her talent. Listening to these plans, MC felt a surge of excitement and curiosity. The mention of a Royal Academy, a place teeming with individuals who possess divine talents, sparked his imagination and reinforced his desire to see the world beyond the frontier. However, as he scanned the room, he noticed the presence of Dagora, the boy who had received the axe talent. He wondered why a commoner's son was being included in such high-level discussions. Zenov eventually acknowledged the boy, looking at him with a firm, encouraging gaze. He instructed Dagora to devote himself entirely to his training, pushing his limits every single day so that he might one day earn the right to stand alongside Krina and gain admission into the prestigious academy through sheer merit and hard work. With that settled, Zenov turns his attention to MC and notices something unusual. He finds it strange that MC has both dark hair and dark eyes, which is rare. When Zenov learns that MC is the son of Rodin, the boar hunter, he immediately stands up and pays his respects. Zenov explains that Rodin is known as a legendary figure in the village, a man responsible for handling most of the dangerous tasks during hunts. People consider him a true hero. As MC listens to all of this, he feels proud to hear his father being praised so highly. In his heart, MC realizes that his dad really is a hero after all. Later that evening, Jera and Rodin bid each other farewell. Ronan believes that Krina may become a hero someday, but he is even more impressed that the Lord acknowledged her. He then tells MC to continue working hard, saying he is destined for great things, since he is his son after all. Just then, MC pulls out a few fruits he stole from the meeting, and Ronan does the same, causing them both to laugh together. Sometime later, MC gets really hyped up because he has finally leveled up his summoner skill. His grimoire now says he has an enhanced skill, so he wonders if that means he will be able to summon stronger things. He gets even more excited as he thinks about how he will eventually be able to summon something cool like a dragon. It took him 2 years to reach this milestone, so when he thinks about it, he realizes that it was actually worth all the effort and waiting. Later that night, Birja and Ronan announce that they are going to have yet another child, and they guess that it is going to be a girl. Because of that, they all start thinking up possible names for the baby. MC's grimoire suddenly appears, and after he looks inside it, he sees the name of the god of creation written there. Without thinking too much, he suggests they name the baby Elmia. His parents quickly tell him to shut up and warn him that they do not speak the name of their god in vain. MC realizes that he messed up, so he quickly tries to change the topic to avoid more trouble. To do that, MC points out that his dad's scar is already healing up. Ronan explains that he got the scar when he passed one of the gods' trials during a boar hunt. MC has no idea what a trial of the gods is, so Ronan takes the time to explain it to him. He says it is a special moment that sometimes happens while they are hunting. During that moment, they feel a sudden burst of energy that removes all their wounds and exhaustion, making them feel refreshed and strong again. When MC hears this, he realizes that this is just how people in this world describe leveling up. It suddenly makes a lot more sense to him. Even though his summoning skill has gone up, he understands that he is still going to remain at level 1 unless he manages to defeat some real monsters. Just improving a skill is not enough. He knows that if he truly wants to grow stronger, he needs real combat experience. Because of this, MC decides that he needs to take hunting more seriously. He asks his dad if he can come along on a hunt so that he can gain experience and maybe even level up for real. However, his dad immediately turns him down. Ronan reminds him that hunting is not some game or training exercise. He tells MC that it has real dangers and serious consequences, and that mistakes during a hunt can cost people their lives. Hearing this, MC understands that getting stronger will not be easy, but that doesn't mean he'll be willing to give up just like that. Later that night, right before MC goes to bed, he pulls out his grimoire and sees that he has just received a message from Elmia. The message explains that during the appraisal ceremony, his stats were shown as E rank because he is in Hell mode. However, the message also shows his true raw stats. MC is relieved and happy to see that his real stats are actually on the same level as Karina's. This makes him feel much more confident about his future. Feeling curious and ready to experiment, MC decides to try using his enhanced skill on Dunka. Just as he expected, the skill amplifies all the stats Denka already had. When MC materializes Denka, even though Denka has not grown much bigger, MC can tell just by looking at him that he has clearly been enhanced and has become stronger. Just then, Denka enters the room and spots the bug. She gets scared when she sees it and quickly squashes it with her foot. Even so, he does not give up. MC spends the rest of the night summoning and testing his skills. By morning, he comes to an important realization. The enhancements he puts on a card do not go away. This means that as long as he has enough MP to spare, he should enhance all the cards in his inventory to make them stronger over time. Soon after, Rodan goes hunting. Everyone bids him goodbye and wishes him luck before he leaves. Later, while MC is doing some chores around the house, he realizes that he has not been able to pull off any new fusions. Even after trying several different combinations, he starts to feel a little frustrated. The last possible combination he has not tried yet is a bird and an insect. When he finally tries to fuse them, he smiles when he sees the result. At first, however, that smile quickly fades when he realizes that the new card that was created is just an apple. At first, he feels disappointed, thinking that the fusion failed in a strange way, but then he decides to carefully check the buffs on the card as he reads through them. His smile returns. He realizes that he has finally gotten a creature that has an MP buff. This is a huge breakthrough for him because it means he will be able to do far more actions and summons over the course of a single day. Before this, he believed it would take him several decades to level up. Now, with this creature's MP buff, he realizes that leveling up could be cut down to just a couple of years instead. MC materializes the card, and the strange apple creature is formed before him. Looking at it, MC decides that it needs a proper name. After thinking for a moment, he smiles and decides to name the creature Ao. After a while, Apo shows MC his special skill. Apo sinks into the ground and then grows into a tall stem that releases the sweet scent of an essential oil. MC is busy breathing in the smell when he suddenly sees his mom coming toward him. He quickly tries to get rid of the stem, but it does not disappear. His mom walks over and notices the stem, but she does not think much of it because it gives off such a pleasant and relaxing smell. Later that day, Krina arrives for training. During their sparring, Krina completely wipes the floor with Alan and easily defeats him again and again. However, after their training is over, Krina admits that MC has gotten a bit tougher than before. MC is shocked to hear this and immediately checks his grimoire. When he looks at it, he sees that both his endurance and attack skills have been buffed. He starts to wonder if a pose's sweet-smelling aroma might have given him these boosts. However, he has no real way to prove it or test it properly, so for now, he decides to let the thought go. As time goes on, MC realizes that they now have a lot of hay thanks to a Poe. After running a few simple tests, MC finally understands how Ao's skill Aroma really works. He learns that Aroma can shorten MP recovery time from 6 hours to 5 hours. This allows him to do more activities and more summoning in a single day, which is a big advantage for his growth. Even so, MC cannot help but feel uneasy because it always feels like he never has enough time to do everything he wants and needs to do. Later that night, MC and his mom start to get worried because Ronan has not come home yet, and it is much later than he is supposed to be. Worry slowly turns to fear as more time passes. Then they suddenly hear loud noises coming from outside. When they rush out to see what is happening, they see several adventurers carrying Rodan on a stretcher. He is clearly badly injured and barely conscious. When they finally bring Rodan inside, Jarrah explains what happened. He tells them that Rodan took a tusk to the gut, which is what left him in such a terrible condition. They managed to keep Rodan alive, for now, thanks to a special healing herb. Jarrah admits that if not for that herb, Rodan would already be dead, even with the herb. However, it is still not enough to fully heal him, and he is left with a large and dangerous wound. MC asks Jarrah how this could have happened. Jarrah explains that this was not just one commoner's fault. Normally, commoners do not even take part in boar hunts because they are far too dangerous. But this year was different. Many commoners volunteered to join the hunt because they had heard stories about Rodin being a great hunting hero. They believed that as long as Rodin was there, they would be safe. Jera admits that neither he nor Rodin felt comfortable allowing commoners to come along on such a dangerous hunt. However, since they could not refuse the orders of the chieftain, they had no choice but to let the commoners join. Even though it put everyone at greater risk, the commoners were taught the proper formations and tactics for what to do if anything went wrong. However, as soon as things actually did go wrong, fear took over them, and they started to panic and break formation. Instead of following the plan, they started running in confusion. One of the commoners was just about to get stabbed, but that was when Rodin stepped in and ended up being the one who got stabbed. Later that night, Rodin finally wakes up, and everyone is relieved to see that he made it through. However, MC cannot help but blame himself. He realizes that he was mostly useless during the crisis, even though he could have helped more. He understands that he has been too focused on leveling up and improving his own abilities, and because of that, he chose not to pay enough attention to what was happening around him and to the people who needed him. He remembers that he has a family he needs to protect, and he quietly makes it his personal mission to become strong enough to truly protect them. Shortly after, Jera arrives and drops off Rodin's portion of the meat they hunted. After that, Jera tells Rodin not to worry about anything during the winter and to focus only on getting better. That is when MC also speaks up. He tells his dad to rest and take it easy because from now on, MC is going to take care of things and provide for the family while Rodin is recovering. The next day, MC keeps his word. He does hard work like fetching water from the well and carrying it all the way back to fill their reserves. Jera then shows MC how to harvest crops from the farm. At first, Jera thinks the work might be too much for MC to handle. However, to his surprise, MC harvests each stem easily and without slowing down. This makes Jera realize that MC is a lot stronger than he first thought. Not long after the previous events, the village chieftain pays a visit to MC's home, accompanied by the commoner whose actions had resulted in Rodin's severe injury. The commoner wastes no time in offering a sincere apology to Rodin for the unfortunate accident. While many onlookers might have expected Rodin to harbor a deep-seated grudge or react with visible anger, he instead remains remarkably composed, calmly advising the man to be more cautious in the future. Observing this exchange, MC is struck by a profound sense of admiration for his father, recognizing the true nobility and kindness that define Rodin's character. Later that afternoon, MC makes his way to a nearby flower field and begins clearing a patch of land to establish a hunting ground where he can set traps for wild game. Utilizing his unique abilities, he summons several small frogs to serve as components of his plan. Once the preparations are complete, MC retreats into the surrounding foliage, hiding patiently in the bushes as he waits for a creature to take the bait. After a significant amount of time passes with no activity, MC begins to fear that his strategy has failed and that his efforts were in vain. Suddenly, a massive avian creature descends from the sky and touches down in the cleared area. As MC observes the bird from his hiding spot, he feels a wave of terror wash over him. He quickly realizes that this is no ordinary prey. It is an albahones, a formidable B-rank monster. MC's original intention had been to attract minor animals or small birds, and he had never anticipated that such a lethal predator would respond to his lures. Knowing that he possesses no realistic chance of defeating a monster of this magnitude, his initial instinct is to flee for his life. However, at that critical moment, his system alerts him that his enhanced skill has ascended to level 2. Bolstered by this development, MC decides to take a calculated risk and test his newfound strength against the albahones. MC launches a bold charge with his sword, but the albahones effortlessly bats him aside. Undeterred, he summons an array of wolves that rush forward to snap and claw at the beast. For a fleeting second, MC believes victory might be within his grasp, but his optimism vanishes when the albahones begin to consume his wolf summons without any apparent effort. With his options rapidly dwindling, MC attempts another direct sword strike, only to be repelled even more violently than before. The albahones loom over him, preparing to deliver a killing blow. As MC raises his weapon in a desperate defensive posture, his body trembles with the realization that his life may be reaching its end. In a final desperate gamble for survival, MC manifests 2 leeches that immediately latch onto the predatory beast, siphoning its vital essence. This crucial intervention gradually drains the stamina of the albahones, granting MC the narrow window of opportunity required to recalibrate his strategy. Though he is physically battered and has exhausted several summons and temporary enhancements, he remains resolute in his conviction that a single perfectly timed strike can secure victory. He manifests his wolves once more, commanding a synchronized offensive alongside the leeches. As his creatures distract the monster, MC lunges into the heart of the fray, driving a decisive blow directly into the skull of the Albahones. The sheer force of the impact is enough to shatter the beast's resistance, ending its life permanently. His grimoire pulses with light, confirming the kill and awarding him 100 XP. Exhilarated by this monumental accomplishment, MC takes a moment to savor his hard-fought triumph. When he eventually drags the massive carcass back to his home, his family is utterly speechless. They had long perceived him as physically fragile and could hardly fathom him besting a D-ranked monster alone. Jera steps in to assist, guiding MC through the rigorous process of properly draining the blood and butchering the beast. During this detailed lesson, Jera explains the complexities of monster anatomy and the kingdom's tax laws regarding the magic stones found within higher-ranked creatures. Seeking to maximize the value of the kill, Jera and MC visit the village chieftain the following day. By emphasizing Rodin's debilitating injury and the immense risk MC took as a young child, they successfully negotiate a more favorable price and a larger share of the meat. MC even manages to secure a long-term agreement to maintain this specific arrangement for future hunts. Empowered by this success, MC returns to the fields every 3 days, eventually employing his tactical combination of leeches, wolves, and steel to slay 2 Albahones simultaneously without losing a single summon. This feat triggers a level up to level 2, which fully restores his health and mana. Reflecting on his rapid growth, MC begins to suspect he is undergoing the legendary Trial of the Gods. However, the secrecy of his situation begins to weigh on him. That evening, after a training session with Krina where his distracted mind leads to a swift defeat, MC decides it is time to disclose the truth to his parents. He is acutely aware that he can never reveal his past life as a gamer or his reincarnation, as such claims would surely be dismissed as madness. Instead, he fabricates a culturally appropriate explanation, claiming to have received a divine oracle from Elmia, the god of creation. He explains that this blessing granted him superior strength and intelligence to face trials that would overwhelm ordinary men. When Deja questions how this is possible, given his no-talent appraisal, MC cleverly explains that his attributes appeared low because the appraisal did not account for the slow progression of his divine trials. He suggests that his talent was simply too new and unique to be recognized by traditional means at the time. Ronan is stunned and deeply moved by the revelation that his son possesses a blessed path. Although MC feels a pang of guilt for the deception, he knows that protecting the secret of his summoner class and his previous life is vital for his survival in this world. In the end, Deja simply embraces MC and praises him for being so brave, especially considering how young he is. Ronan then asks MC what he plans to do next, and MC replies that, for now, all he wants to do is prove himself worthy by passing all of the trials. Ronan is proud to hear that answer, but he also tells MC not to hesitate to ask for help if he ever needs it. MC thanks both of his parents for being so understanding and for giving him their full support. After that, Ronan tells MC that it would be best if he kept this a secret for now because it would be very bad if people started to mistake him for a false prophet. However, Ronan says that Jera will be the only exception since Jera is always bragging about how cool Krina is as a sword lord. Ronan says that now he will finally get the chance to boast about how cool his son is as well. By the time winter comes, MC takes one of the Albahones they had stored and begins cutting it up. After that, he heads into town with Jera to trade the meat for supplies. Jera has already heard the news about MC being blessed and tested by Lord Elmia, and Jera honestly is not surprised at all because he always believed there was something special about MC. As they travel together, the two of them continue talking, and MC brings up the topic of the difference between commoners and serfs. Jera explains that most of the difference comes down to social status and taxes. He explains that serfs are under a completely different tax system where they must pay 3 gold coins for each adult and 1 gold coin for each child every year. After hearing that, MC asks what it would take for a serf to become a commoner. Jera explains that it would require paying a tribute of 10 gold coins per person in the family. He also mentions that there are rumors about a baron sometimes rewarding people with commoner status, but he makes it clear that those are only rumors. When MC hears all of this, he realizes that since his mother is about to have another baby, it would take their family 50 gold coins to become commoners because they will soon be a family of 5. MC spends the rest of the day trading with Jera, and he starts to get the hang of how trading works. By the end of the day, he returns home with a large bundle of firewood on his back. Realizing that he now mostly understands how bartering works, he also realizes that he can do some market research the next time he comes into town. The next time MC goes trading, he does it all by himself. While there, he carefully documents the market value and barter value for every single item so that he can use that information to help himself in the future. Later, MC walks into a herb shop and asks the merchant if there is any medicine that can recover MP. The merchant immediately responds that they do not have anything like that because such items are far too expensive for the shop to carry. That said, MC just takes a look around at all of the herbs and medicines on the shelves, and he realizes that it would be extremely difficult to document all of them manually. So he focuses very hard, and just by thinking about it, ends up drawing all of the herbs into his grimoire without touching anything physically. After that, MC asks the merchant if he has any Muller's flowers in stock. However, the merchant suddenly gets very worked up at hearing that name because of the last time he sold one. The merchant explains that some time ago, Jera burst into the shop and demanded to buy a Muller's flower. He insisted on getting it because a friend of his was sick, but he did not even pay in full at the time and promised to pay the rest later. The merchant still has not received the full payment, and on top of that, it was the last of Muller's flowers in stock. That is what upsets the merchant the most. MC hears this and realizes that Jera came into the shop to buy the very herb that ended up saving Rodin's life after he was attacked that night. If the merchant had simply refused to sell it, MC figures that he might not have a father anymore. To show his appreciation, MC gifts the merchant some Albahan jerky and thanks him sincerely for his kindness, after which he leaves the shop. On his way back, MC is busy checking out some weapons in town when he runs into the same kid from the appraisal ceremony who had gained the axe talent, Dagora and the chieftain's son, Pelmoas. MC knows that Dagora is nothing but trouble, so he tries to mind his own business and leave quietly. However, Dagora smacks him on the head and immediately demands that MC become his minion. In response, MC pulls out his wooden sword and points it directly at Dagora. Dagora becomes flustered and complains that it is unfair because he does not have a weapon. MC tells him that he is willing to fight fairly, so Dagora should go get any weapon of his choice while MC waits right here. Dagora returns shortly after with a sword and charges at MC, but MC easily dodges and blocks all of his attacks. Dagora's strikes are strong, which makes sense since he is an axe user. But even so, his strength hardly compares to Krina's. MC decides to end the duel quickly, knocks the sword out of Dagora's hand, and wins the fight. He simply acknowledges his victory and walks off nonchalantly, which makes Dagora even more furious. Later that night, MC returns home, and Rodin is seen removing his bandages. This suggests that he is back in top shape and ready to continue hunting. Deja, however, warns him not to overdo it and risk pulling a muscle. The next day at Krina's house, Dagora shows up again to challenge MC to a rematch. He loses badly several times but his ego refuses to let him accept defeat, so he keeps asking for more rematches. Meanwhile, MC's younger brother Mash has already started sword training with Krina, which makes MC excited to see how Mash will perform at the appraisal ceremony in 2 years. After some time, the new baby is born, and the family decides to name her Mila. Later, Ronan returns home from a hunt with Jera, only to announce that the chieftains are summoning the family. Apparently, the chieftain wants them to increase the number of boars they deliver to the Baron from 10 to 15. To make that happen, the chieftain wants them to allow the commoners to join in on the hunt again this year. Deja thinks this request is ridiculous, especially since Rodin suffered a terrible injury during the last hunt. Rodin admits that he wanted to decline, but it turns out that this was not a request, it was an order directly from the Baron. If they do not deliver 15 boars by winter this year, the Empire will recruit more serfs from elsewhere. Hearing this, MC immediately understands that more serfs would mean less land to go around, which would put those who cannot hunt at risk of losing their land. Jera adds that the worst part is that Baron wants them to deliver 20 boars by the end of next year. Ronan figures that the only way to meet that demand is to hunt more often than the usual once every 10 days. MC then speaks up and suggests that they simply follow the Baron's order. Jera tells him not to interrupt when adults are speaking, but Ronan stops her and allows MC to continue. MC explains that they cannot refuse a direct order from the Baron, so even if the commoners end up being deadweight, they need to find a way to make that deadweight useful. Based on his previous experience with games, MC knows that making characters as useful as possible, even when they do not seem capable, is his specialty. He tells them to trust him and let him handle the situation. He reminds them that he was blessed with wisdom from Lord Elmia, and because of that blessing, he believes he has a plan that might actually work. The next day, MC and Rodin meet up with the commoners, who will be joining them on the hunt. When the commoners see MC, they are surprised that a little kid like him is tagging along to hunt. Rodin explains the plan is for everyone to adopt his hunting strategy. While MC will simply tag along to watch and learn, MC assures the others that he will not get in anyone's way and then bows to thank them for allowing him to come along. Although he feels a lingering sense of disappointment regarding his inability to participate directly in the heat of battle, MC rationalizes that his primary objective at this stage is the successful training of the village's newest hunters. He is deeply motivated by the desire to help the group gain the combat experience necessary to secure more boars in the future, largely because he is haunted by the memory of his father's debilitating injury during the previous year's excursion. During the preparations, one of the commoners approaches Rodin to offer a sincere apology for the role he played in that past accident. Rodin, showing his characteristic maturity and lack of spite, dismisses the apology with a kind word, insisting that the man should not dwell on historical mistakes but rather focus entirely on the dangerous task currently at hand. Once the gate leading into the dense forest is unbarred, the party begins their cautious advancement into the wilderness. As they cross the threshold, MC is struck by a wave of profound realization. After spending 7 long years confined to the status of a serf, this moment marks the very first time he has ever stepped beyond the borders of his home village. He views this departure as a small but undeniably significant milestone on his long journey toward eventually liberating his family from their life of forced labor. His excitement is further amplified by the prospect of finally seeing the legendary White Dragon Mountains. He has spent his young life hearing myths of a magnificent white dragon that supposedly nests within those peaks, and he has nurtured a secret, fervent dream of one day catching even a fleeting glimpse of the mythical beast. The silence of the woods is soon broken as the hunt officially commences. The teams take up their pre-arranged positions just as a massive boar erupts into view, charging with terrifying momentum. With practice timing, the bait team maneuvers skillfully to lure the creature in a specific direction, leading it directly into the path of the tank team. These robust individuals move in to pin the beast in place, neutralizing its ability to escape or launch a lethal counterattack. Finally, the strike team closes the distance to deliver the finishing blow. As MC watches this sequence unfold from the sidelines, he realizes that he is witnessing the exact hunting methodology his father and other veteran trackers have perfected over a decade. He is genuinely impressed by the sheer efficiency of the strategy, noting how every movement is carefully calculated to ensure maximum success with minimum risk. When the boar is ultimately slain, a palpable sense of triumph washes over the commoners. For them, a successful kill is more than just a source of food. It is a symbolic victory akin to passing a trial ordained by the gods, serving as a testament to their growing prowess. MC, observing the size and ferocity of the fallen creature, estimates it to be a C-rank monster and concludes that the participants must have harvested a substantial amount of experience points. Driven by curiosity, he summons his grimoire to check his own progress, only to be met with the stinging realization that he has gained absolutely nothing. After a moment of quiet reflection, he admits that this outcome is logical, given that he remained a mere spectator and did not contribute to the physical combat. Despite his own lack of statistical growth, MC finds a deep sense of fulfillment in watching the villagers gain confidence in their new roles. Once the tension of the kill has subsided, he engages in friendly conversation with the men, discussing the various types of monster meat they have encountered in their lives. During the chat, one villager mentions his proficiency in butchery and offers to help MC process any kills he might acquire. Seizing the opportunity, MC leads the man to his hidden stash of albahones, asking for professional assistance in preparing the carcasses. Knowing the value of such labor, MC proposes a trade. For every albahones the man butchers, he will receive 2 generous portions of meat as compensation. The man, struck by the fairness of the deal, agrees immediately. For MC, this is a strategic move to save his meager gold reserves, as he is still hyper-focused on accumulating the 50 gold pieces required to buy his family's freedom. As the day progresses, the group initiates a second hunt, though they decide to pivot their tactics by splitting into smaller, more agile teams. This adjustment proves highly effective, allowing them to double their yield of boars in a fraction of the time. Throughout the process, MC remains puzzled by the Baron's sudden and aggressive demand for such a high quota of prey, though he recognizes that, as a serf, he has no choice but to follow the nobility's decrees. Suddenly, the rhythm of the hunt is shattered when a rogue boar charges directly toward MC's position. Jera reacts with lightning speed, intercepting the beast and delivering a devastating fatal strike. He then steps back, inviting the trainees to finish the job so they can claim the credit. Unlike the previous encounter, MC notices a shift in his status. Upon checking his grimoire, he is elated to discover that he has finally advanced to level 3. He quickly deduces the mechanics behind this sudden growth. He realizes that by having one of his summons make physical contact with a target just before its death, the system recognizes him as an active participant in the kill. In a split-second maneuver, MC had summoned Denka at the precise moment the boar charged, causing the beast to trample the tiny creature. While this resulted in Denka's tragic death, a sight that caused MC to offer a silent, heartfelt apology as the summoned spirit faded, the sacrifice was tactically successful, granting MC the experience he so desperately needed. He admits to himself with cold pragmatism that, while regrettable, the level up was well worth the cost of a single summon. 3 months later, the transition into the new year is marked by an invitation for MC and Krina to visit the chieftain's residence. After the formal festivities, they return to MC's home to enjoy a private celebration with Jera and his wife. The atmosphere is warm and jovial, filled with the aroma of abundant food and the sound of shared laughter. During the meal, Jera inquires about the chieftain's mood, and MC confirms that the leader was extremely vocal in his appreciation for their hard work. Roan is not surprised by this, as he knew their efficient methods would easily meet the suggested quota of 20 boars. MC then reveals a final surprise. The chieftain was so impressed that he gifted MC a bottle of high-quality liquor. Knowing the legendary weakness Rodan and Jera have for alcohol, MC decides to use the bottle as a bargaining chip for a clever trap. MC proposes a challenge to the two men, laying out the terms with a mischievous glint in his eye. He suggests that if he wins a competition of his choosing, he will be granted the right to join the hunt as a full participant, complete with his own spear and equal standing. If he loses, the two adults get to keep the prized liquor for themselves. Driven by their thirst, Rodan and Jera agree to the deal before even asking what the contest entails. When MC reveals it is an arm wrestling match, they are initially incredulous, laughing at the idea of a young child challenging grown warriors to a test of raw strength. What they are unaware of is that MC has been strategically stockpiling strength-enhancing buff cards specifically for such a confrontation. Jera steps forward first, clearly underestimating the boy and treating the match like a joke. However, the moment their hands lock, Jera's expression shifts from amusement to shock. MC holds his ground with the immovable strength of an oak, resisting every ounce of pressure Jera applies. Despite Jera's best efforts to overpower him, MC eventually forces Jera's hand down to the table, securing a stunning victory. Through his analytical mind, MC estimates that Jera's strength stat likely sits somewhere between 150 and 200. Next, it is Rodan's turn, and MC immediately senses that his father is on an entirely different tier of power. Even with his magical buffs, MC finds himself steadily losing ground as Rodan's natural C-rank strength overwhelms him. Although MC loses this second bout and honorably surrenders the liquor, he views the experience as a vital lesson in understanding the gap between himself and a true veteran. The loss does not dampen MC's spirits. Instead, it provides him with a clear benchmark for his future growth. Rona, impressed by the boy's effort but firm in his protective instincts, declares that MC cannot join the front lines of the hunt until he is strong enough to defeat his father. Rather than being deterred, MC accepts this condition as a personal challenge. Shortly after the celebration, he is delighted to find that his level has increased yet again. Checking his grimoire, he discovers a revolutionary new skill, the ability to view E-ranked cards at his leisure. He instantly recognizes the strategic value of this, knowing that access to higher-tier summons will allow his power to skyrocket, potentially making him a match for Rodan much sooner than expected. While exploring the updated pages of his grimoire, MC stumbles upon an even more mysterious addition, a physical cavity carved into the paper that functions as a dimensional storage space. He discovers that he can place objects into this hollow, where they disappear into a pocket dimension far larger than the book itself. He is stunned to have received a god-tier skill like storage so early in his journey, and he can't help but feel that some unseen force is intentionally accelerating his development. The following day, he begins experimenting with his new E-rank summons. He first calls forth a shimmering, magical butterfly that, while beautiful, seems largely ornamental. However, his second summon is a terrifying saber-toothed tiger. Though he initially flinches at the predator's fierce appearance, he soon realizes the beast is completely loyal to him. He decides to name the tiger Tama, officially welcoming the powerful creature as the vanguard of his growing army of summons. Afterward, MC attempts to fuse 2 of his summons. That is when he notices a major limitation. Each fusion requires a magic stone. With this realization, he understands that from now on he will need a large supply of magic stones if he wants to continue growing stronger. The only way he knows how to obtain magic stones is by hunting horned rabbits. Later that night, he brings this up with his father. Unfortunately, Rodan tells him that horned rabbits will not be appearing anytime soon. A ditch was dug around the village some time ago, preventing monsters from entering. This means MC no longer has an easy way to gather magic stones. Disappointed, MC spends the night thinking about alternatives. The following day, while Krina is once again training and kicking Dagora's butt, MC is busy speaking with Pelmois and asks if he knows anything about magic stones. Pelmois, who is knowledgeable about such matters, explains that D and C ranked magic stones are usually found in the royal capital and are considered valuable. On the other hand, E ranked magic stones are almost worthless and can sometimes be found lying around. To prove his point, Pelmois casually picks one up from the ground and hands it to MC before walking away. This single act fills MC with renewed hope. He realizes that if E-ranked magic stones are that common, he can simply gather them himself. Over time, with help from the villagers, MC manages to collect a large number of E-ranked magic stones. Using them, he successfully creates all of his E-ranked summons. As he finishes summoning them, a boar suddenly charges toward him. Without hesitation, his summons react instantly and kill it in one swift motion. MC briefly celebrates, but then another boar appears. Once again, one of his summons steps in and protects him. At that moment, MC suddenly opens his eyes. He realizes everything he just witnessed was a hallucination. Closing his eyes again, he reflects on the past 7 years. There was no guidebook for summoners, no teacher to instruct him. He has been forced to figure it all out himself. Through this realization, MC understands that each summon has a specific role. Insect types are used to apply debuffs, beasts specialize in offense, birds are meant for gathering intel, grass types handle healing, stone types are focused on defense. When combined, they enable him to fulfill every role of a standard party entirely by himself. That is what makes a summoner truly powerful. He now understands why he was given the storage skill. It exists so he can store the countless magic stones he will need. With an army of creatures at his command, MC believes that a summoner may be stronger than even the Demon Lord himself. Sometime later, MC, Rodin, and Jera attend an early meeting with the chieftain. During the meeting, the chieftain informs them that the Baron has taken a keen interest in their recent success with the boar hunts. Because of this, he now wishes to come and witness the hunts in person. Jera becomes visibly upset when she hears this news. This is the same Baron who demanded an unreasonable number of boars to be hunted in the first place, and now he wants to come and watch as if it is some kind of performance. Ronan, however, does not seem bothered by the idea of the Baron visiting. Instead, he is more confused about why MC has been asked to attend the meeting as well. The chieftain explains that since the Baron is coming, he wants MC to act as his guide. MC will be responsible for showing him around the village, entertaining him, and explaining how the hunts are carried out. Jera does not understand why MC must be the one to handle this task. She asks why the chieftain cannot simply have his own son Pelmoas do it instead. In response, the chieftain explains that Pelmoas is not the most suitable person for such a responsibility. He has heard that it was MC's clever ideas that led to the recent success in the boar hunts. Because of that, he believes MC would be perfect for the role. He then directly asks MC if he is willing to do it. MC takes a moment to think. He realizes that he does not care about pleasing the Baron personally. What truly matters to him is freeing his family from serf. If he continues hunting boars the traditional way, it will take 10 years to earn enough to raise their status to that of commoners. However, he also remembers that the Baron can sometimes grant social status directly as a reward. With that possibility in mind, MC agrees to serve as the Baron's guide. A few days later, Baron Granville arrives in the town with his daughter, Cecil. They are escorted by Zenovist in several knights. The chieftain welcomes them warmly, and soon after, everyone goes inside for dinner. After some light conversation, Baron Granville brings up the topic of the boar hunt. He apologizes to the chieftain for the sudden and heavy demand for boars. He explains that he understands the target is difficult to meet, but he had no choice because the order came directly from the king. The chieftain responds that he understands the situation and holds no resentment over it. As they begin eating, everyone comments on how delicious the food tastes. Cecil is especially impressed and asks what kind of meat is being served. MC politely explains that it is albaheron meat from a fresh one he hunted just the day before. He then takes the opportunity to introduce himself as the Baron's guide for the visit, and says that it is a great honor to serve him. Baron Gren is impressed by MC's manners and assumes he must be the chieftain's son. However, the chieftain corrects him and explains that MC is actually Rodin's son, one of the finest boar hunters in the village. Zenova immediately recognizes the name Rodin and remembers MC from their previous encounter. Baron Granville, however, is unfamiliar with them. He asks whether Rodin was once a member of the knighthood. The chieftain clarifies that Rodin and his family are actually serfs. Upon hearing this, Cecil becomes irritated. She questions why someone like MC was allowed to even be in the same room as them. Baron Gran immediately corrects her. He tells her firmly that she must not speak about or to serfs as if they were animals. Realizing her mistake, she accepts the correction and immediately apologizes to her father. But even after being corrected, she continues to give MC the stink eye. She says nothing more, but her expression makes her feelings obvious. Setting that aside, Zenova turns his attention to MC and says he hopes MC is prepared to explain how the hunt will proceed the next day. Zenov understands that hunting 20 boars is a very ambitious goal. He adds that if the task proves too difficult for the serfs, the knights will step in and take over. Cecil then announces that she will also be joining the hunt. She says she wants to see what a boar looks like up close. Hearing Zenov's earlier remark, MC realizes that Zenov still doubts the ability of the serfs. In response, MC calmly states that 20 boars are not a large number for them. He assures everyone that they will have no trouble meeting their quota, and tomorrow's hunt will serve as clear proof of their skill. The following day, they all head into the forest where the hunt is set to take place. MC, along with Baron Granville and his entourage, is seated on a raised platform built high above the ground. From there, they can safely observe the entire operation. Soon after, the hunters step forward and prepare to begin. One of them runs into the forest wearing light armor crafted from boar horns and pelts. This method is designed to lure the boars out of hiding. The pungent scent of the forest and the intimidating appearance of the hunters acted as a catalyst, provoking the wild beasts until a massive boar finally erupted from the tree line in a fit of primal rage. The moment the creature emerged, the defense contingent sprang into action with practiced, rhythmic speed. They immediately encircled the charging behemoth, locking their thick, reinforced wooden shields into an unbreakable formation that effectively boxed the animal in, stifling its momentum and severing its avenues of escape. The boar thrashed with terrifying strength, its tusks scraping against the wood, yet it could not breach the wall of steel-willed men. Seizing this window of opportunity, the strike team surged forward. They systematically thrust their spears into the beast's thick hide from a dozen different angles, executing a series of precise, controlled punctures that drained the creature's stamina. Once the boar had been sufficiently weakened, Ronan himself stepped through the ranks. With a single authoritative motion, he drove his spear deep into the boar's neck, delivering a swift and merciful end to the struggle. Standing upon the observation platform, Baron Granville watched the entire display with narrowed, calculating eyes and found himself visibly shaken by their competence. He candidly admitted to those around him that he had never expected to witness such a high degree of tactical coordination and mechanical efficiency from a group of mere frontiersmen. However, the atmosphere shifted instantly when the forest seemed to vomit forth 2 more boars simultaneously. Zenov, fearing the hunters would be crushed under the weight of a double assault, instinctively signaled for the elite knights to intervene. Yet before the order could be echoed, MC calmly reached out and held his hand. The young boy explained with chilling composure that the hunters had been subjected to grueling training specifically for these multi-target scenarios. There was absolutely no reason for the nobility to fear. True to MC's prediction, the hunters did not falter. They bifurcated into 2 disciplined units, replicating their previous strategy with surgical precision. Each subgroup isolated a boar, restrained its movements, and executed the kill in perfect harmony. Cecil, watching the spray of crimson and the raw violence of the frontier, found her senses overwhelmed, and she collapsed into a dead faint from the sheer shock of the spectacle. In the aftermath of the successful cull, Lord Granville stepped onto the bloody soil to inspect the results. He counted the carcasses and noted aloud that with 3 boars down, they were still 17 short of their monumental 20-boar quota. MC, standing tall beside the nobility, respectfully but firmly corrected the Baron. He revealed that long before the royal entourage had even arrived, the village hunters had already successfully harvested 7 boars, leaving a mere 10 remaining. Granville was stunned into a rare silence, his previous biases crumbling as he realized these villagers were exponentially more capable than the reports had suggested. He began to ponder the reality that his knights were likely redundant in the face of such raw, localized expertise. As the momentum of the hunt carried on, MC seized the moment to present Granville with 2 strategic petitions. His first request was for the formal authorization to construct an extensive network of permanent shield walls throughout the hunting grounds to provide the men with superior cover and safer control over the beasts. His second request was more unorthodox. He asked for the sanctioned procurement and organized distribution of high-proof liquor among the laborers. The Baron was momentarily baffled, unable to see the link between alcohol and the hunt. MC, however, broke it down with the logic of a seasoned economist. The sudden surplus of boar meat would inevitably lead to a market saturation within the village, causing the value of their primary resource to plummet. By introducing liquor as a secondary trade commodity, they would create an internal economy and stabilize prices. Furthermore, the spirits would serve as a vital psychological balm, maintaining the morale of the men after facing death in the woods. Both Zainov and the Baron found the logic flawless, and Granville commended MC, noting that the boy possessed a chillingly advanced intellect and the leadership qualities of a future statesman. It was time for Baron's party to depart. As Cecil was hoisted onto her mount, she cast a lingering sharp glance at MC, warning him with a haughty tone not to let her father's uncharacteristic praise inflate his ego. She galloped away with her butler in tow, leaving MC to breathe a sigh of immense relief, privately hoping that his path would never cross with the abrasive young noblewoman again. Yet the day's surprises were far from over. Later that evening, MC, Rodin, and Jera were called to a formal audience. Kneeling in the dirt before the Baron, they listened as he officially lauded their peerless discipline. As a direct reward for their service to the crown, he declared that their families were hereby elevated, stripped of their lowly status as serfs, and reborn as free commoners. For MC, the words felt like a physical weight lifting off his chest. For 8 grueling years, he had lived under the shadow of servitude, and now the gates of the world were finally swinging open. He was no longer a prisoner of the land, he was a free agent of his own destiny. In his heart, the White Dragon Mountains and the mythical beasts that resided there called out to him. He was ready to trade boar hunting for dragon slaying. However, the Baron then pivoted to a more somber subject, requesting a history of how these hunts had truly begun to serve as a report for the king. When Rodin's face darkened with the shadows of the past, Jera stepped in to narrate the tragedy. He recounted the arrival of the original 100 families 13 years ago, and the 6 months of backbreaking labor they spent reclaiming the soil, only for a monstrous boar to appear and liquefy their entire harvest in a single afternoon of destruction. It was in that pit of despair that Ronan had the idea of hunting. Granville, moved by the revelation that Rodin still carried the crushing guilt of a comrade who had died in that first encounter, offered a royal boon. He would grant any one wish Rodin desired. MC expected his father to ask for wealth or perhaps a permanent supply of liquor for the village. Instead, Rodin looked at his son and asked the Baron to take MC into his service at the Grand Estate. MC felt his soul wither at the thought. He feared that being a servant would simply be another form of the cage he had just escaped, preventing him from ever seeing the wider world. But Granville interrupted, stating that MC was far too intelligent for mere labor. He instead proposed that MC be appointed as a personal manservant to the Granville family, a position of immense prestige and proximity to power. Seeing the radiant pride and unadulterated hope in his father's eyes, MC realized he could not refuse this bridge to a better life for his kin. He swallowed his reservations and accepted the mantle of responsibility. The following morning was a blur of emotional farewells. The entire village gathered in a sea of faces to see off their young prodigy. His brother Mash wailed with a heartbreaking sincerity, while little Mila watched with wide, uncomprehending eyes. Krina, his longtime rival and friend, stood ready for one final engagement. They crossed wooden blades in a duel that left the spectators breathless. To the crowd's shock, MC began dominating the exchange. Unbeknownst to them, he had utilized 20 precious magic stones to manifest a hawk summon, which had permanently enhanced his physical agility to superhuman levels. Though he clearly had the advantage, MC graciously called the match a draw, promising Krina a true conclusion in the future. Dogora, struggling with his own silent emotions, thrust a finely crafted dagger into MC's hands as a parting gift before disappearing into the crowd. As the Baron's carriage began its slow roll away from the only home he had ever known, MC watched the village shrink into the horizon. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down his cheek, not as a sign of weakness, but as a final tribute to the life he was leaving behind as he stepped into the vast, dangerous unknown of his new future. A few days afterward, Alan begins his responsibilities as a manservant and reaches the Granville estate. Immediately, he feels astonished by just how vast and stunning the estate appears. He's never experienced surroundings this refined before, so everything leaves him completely awestruck. However, his wonder is swiftly broken when Cecil promptly begins exploiting him, climbing onto his shoulders and treating him like a stool to grab fruit from a tall branch. Alan becomes deeply irritated by this and nearly loses control, ready to toss her away. Yet he chooses to tolerate it because his whole family relies on him to keep this position, and he cannot risk making a mistake. Once she finally climbs down, she bites into the fruit and instantly shows her dislike because it tastes extremely sour. Right then, an airship glides overhead. And this is the first moment Alan has ever witnessed one. He feels utterly amazed since he had only ever read about airships previously, so seeing one with his own eyes fills him with overwhelming excitement and joy. Even though he has only recently arrived at the estate, he starts to believe that working as a manservant may not be as terrible as he had first imagined. The following morning, Alan awakens brimming with energy, eager to begin the day and carry out his responsibilities correctly. He walks downstairs toward the maid headquarters, where he is presented to the chief's servant, a relaxed and easygoing man called Rickley. When Alan approaches, Rickley asks how things have been going with Cecile, and from MC's face, Rickley can instantly see that it has been quite difficult. Rickley sympathizes with MC and explains that matters would be far easier if he served as a hall boy rather than a manservant. Alan, still puzzled about the difference, decides to request clarification. Rickley calmly explains that several ranks of servants exist within the estate, mainly separated into senior ranks and junior ranks. Though manservants belong to the junior rank, they are still regarded as members of the family and are involved in household affairs, treated with honor and respect. Hall boys, meanwhile, are likewise junior rank, yet are not viewed as part of the family. They simply act as occasional assistants who help whenever required and possess no familial standing. Alan feels shocked to discover that certain servants are treated as members of the royal family and participate in their events. After hearing this, he finally realizes why his father had been brought to tears of happiness. Grant had been generous enough not only to employ him, but also to make him a member of the household, granting him a position and respect that felt genuinely special and meaningful. Soon afterward, Alan serves breakfast to the royal family, carefully placing each dish and ensuring everything suits their preferences. The First Lady is instantly impressed by how quickly Alan has learned his servant responsibilities. She had never imagined a former serf like him could show such flawless manners, attentiveness, and precision. Granell, noticing MC's dedication, mentions the fact that Alan lacks any talent, which immediately draws Cecil's attention. She grabs the chance to boast about herself, proudly announcing that she possesses the wizard talent, while her brother Mihi is a swordsman. Granell, however, quickly scolds her, reminding her never to boast about talents, causing Cecile to quietly correct herself. Soon after, one of Gran's daughters, Thomas, starts to cry because she also lacks a talent like Alan. Granell gently comforts her, assuring her that she will still have the chance to attend the Nobles' College in the royal capital. He explains that he himself was born without a talent, which is why he studied at the Nobles' College, and that it was there he met her mother and started his family. Hearing this, Thomas does her best to feel better, encouraged by her father's example and reassurance. Her spirits lift slowly, and hope begins to grow steadily within her young heart again. With that settled, Alan enjoys having the afternoon off and decides to head into the town to explore. He is immediately fascinated by how much larger and more advanced the town is compared to his village. As he looks around, his eyes catch the Adventurer Guild, and he hurries inside to see if he can register as an adventurer. When he speaks to the receptionist and tells her he is only 8 years old, she shakes her head and informs him that the minimum age to register is 12. Undeterred, Alan decides that this won't stop him from pursuing his monster hunting dreams. He heads over to the notice board to gather information about monsters in the area, studying the postings carefully and noting which creatures appear frequently, including mentions of the legendary White Dragon. As Alan examines the board, an adventurer named Raven approaches him and harshly tells him to leave, insisting that this is no place for a child to linger. Alan almost complies, but he quickly realizes that this encounter is an opportunity to gain information from a real adventurer. Using a few clever mind games and questions, he manages to extract detailed knowledge about the monsters listed on the notice board, including their strengths, habits, and weaknesses. Just as he finishes, Raven's comrades arrive, signaling that it's time for MC to leave. He departs, satisfied that he now has all the information he needs to begin tackling his next goal. The next morning, Alan heads for the town gates to venture outside, only to be stopped by one of the guards. He quickly presents his servant pass, and the guard, recognizing its authority, steps aside and opens the gate for him. After reaching a certain point, Alan notices with some disappointment that he hasn't run into any monsters along the way, so he decides he'll need to search for them instead. Thinking quickly, he summons 5 hawks and sends them out to scout the nearby area for any signs of monsters. After a short while, one of the hawks returns, indicating that it has located some creatures. Following the hawk's lead, Alan discovers a small group of goblins nearby. Without wasting any time, he summons 5 saber-toothed tigers, which charge forward and annihilate the goblins with ease. MC even manages to deal the final blow to one goblin by hurling a rock, which makes him laugh and triumph. Defeating all the goblins earns him a 1000 XP, and he is elated at the progress he's making. He collects the magic stones dropped by the goblins and stores them carefully, then commands the hawks to continue scouting for more targets. The hawks soon locate another group of goblins, and MC uses his remaining summons to wipe them out efficiently. One by one, they fall, and by the end of the day, Alan has earned over 16,000 XP. He jumps in joy, declaring this the best day off ever because he leveled up twice. On top of the experience gained, he also acquires valuable buffs for his summons and collects more useful information about magic stones and the behavior of D-rank monsters. Despite it being night, Alan still feels energetic and instructs the Hawks to find the next target. However, the Hawks refuse because it's too dark to see. Realizing that he had been relying on the Hawks to guide him back, Alan suddenly understands that he's lost in the woods with no clear way out. After some struggle, he eventually manages to navigate his way back home. About a month later, he stops by one of the blacksmith stores in town to purchase iron balls for hunting. Paying a total of 60 silver coins, he feels a sense of pride knowing he has already reached level 12 in such a short span of time. After spending a day wandering through town, Alan finally returns home and finds Sybos waiting for him outside quietly today. Sybos informs him that Gran wishes to speak with him privately soon today. Alan heads to Granville's office, where Gran praises him for his excellent service as a servant lately. Indeed. However, Gran also expresses concern about MC's routine on his days off, noting he leaves very early each morning and returns extremely late every night. Alan understands their concern and chooses complete honesty right away. He explains he has been using his spare time hunting monsters beyond town whenever possible alone these days, because hunting runs in his blood. As the son of a boar hunter, Granville feels impressed, since he thought Alan had simply wasted time before during those hours away. To make things official, they agree that all meat MC brings will be bought for 1 silver each piece from now onward. Alan feels delighted hearing this, realizing he can pursue hunting while earning money at the same time. 6 months later, Alan returns to the forest as usual, preparing to hunt goblins again nearby today alone. Suddenly, his hawks swoop toward him, acting strange and far more agitated than usual today. Sensing trouble, Alan runs where they lead him and finds Raven and his party under attack by several goblins nearby. Raven has suffered fatal wounds, leaving Rita and Millside to fight desperately against attackers alone now. Alan studies everything carefully and realizes he cannot summon creatures before them without causing chaos everywhere. So this time he fights personally instead of relying on summons again. He and Rita coordinate strikes with weapons and quickly defeat the remaining goblins together. For MC, the battle feels effortless because his level has risen greatly through months of training. His strength and agility exceed 300 now, letting him handle D-rank monsters easily. Though enemies fall fast, Raven's injuries remain severe, and MC knows immediate action is necessary. He uses a healing flower on Raven, instantly sealing wounds and restoring him fully. Raven recognizes Alan from the Adventurer Guild and thanks him sincerely for saving his life today. Just as Alan prepares to leave, Raven's group calls him back, insisting they repay his help somehow. Alan wants nothing extravagant, so he asks them to gather 100 E-rank magic stones for him, which they gladly promise to do next week. After parting ways, Alan confronts Hawkins about flying beyond the 3-kilometer limit he had clearly set earlier. Watching Hawkins' expression, Alan realizes the hawk went farther out of compassion to help adventurers in danger. He had believed summons only followed orders, but now he understands they have feelings and judgment too. Acknowledging this, MC pats Hawkins gently and apologizes for his earlier tone, saying he never meant to scold harshly. Hawkins accepts the apology, and their bond grows stronger than before. With everything settled, Alan resumes duties as manservant once more, enduring Lady Cecil using him as a makeshift stool for jam from the top shelf again. Alan continues balancing service and adventure with the same steady dedication as he has before in life. He accepts every challenge calmly now, knowing both paths define his purpose completely and shape his future steadily ahead with patience, courage, discipline, and quiet determination guiding each step he takes through service and battle alike. Every single passing day forward, without hesitation or doubt ever again. Shortly after that evening, Captain Zenoff arrives at Lord Granville's residence to share dinner, and he feels impressed by the meal. He asks, "What is this gourmet nonsense?" And Cecily replies that it is the meat from a horned rabbit which Alan hunted. Zenoff looks impressed and says that he expected this from the son of the legendary hunter. He then informs Alan that Krina Village fulfilled the quota of 20 massive boars this winter too, and Alan is not particularly surprised to hear that. Cecily's brother Thomas suddenly begins complaining and asks, why haven't they received any boar meat this year? Despite several hunts, Alan realizes that Thomas is making a valid point because he hasn't noticed anyone here eating boar meat. He wonders whether the greedy king kept everything for himself, and that seems reasonable to him. Graham-Bell, however, scolds Thomas that he shouldn't act selfishly, and Alan feels sorry for him because even serfs consume more meat than he does. Granville's wife says it is truly a shame that they don't have boar meat. as she had hoped to prepare many meat dishes for the winter celebration. Thomas gets an idea upon hearing this and asks Alan to hunt a white deer next time. However, Cecily becomes offended by this because she is possessive of her servant and tells her brother that only she can give him orders. Lady Granville tells her children that they are being silly because a white deer would be too difficult for Alan to hunt. But he is not willing to back away from this challenge. He accepts the task to hunt a white deer. And while everyone is joyful and excited, Zainoff remains curious about how Alan will manage to do that. Shortly after that, winter arrives and Alan goes into the forest to build a snowman, but he is quite awful at it. Suddenly, his hawk arrives there after spotting a white deer, and Alan immediately follows it toward a gigantic white deer that is feeding on some goblins. Alan is a little startled upon seeing it up close, and he mentally prepares himself for the hunt. He first summons his frogs and orders them to provoke the deer, and they begin jumping like fools. The white deer falls for it and charges toward the frogs to crush them beneath its hooves. Alan waits for the perfect moment to order his frogs to return toward him and then runs a short distance forward before summoning the frogs again. They taunt the deer again, forcing it to chase them, and Alan repeats this taunting and running tactic again and again until he lures it toward the spot where he had been playing with snow earlier. Just as the deer reaches that spot, it drops into a pit that Alan had dug out beforehand, and he is pleased that his strategy succeeded. With the white deer trapped inside a cramped pit, Alan has all the advantage he requires to finish it. Shortly after that, he reaches the mansion carrying the enormous carcass of the white deer, and all the servants rush outside holding spears. Fearing that a monster has appeared at their gate, the carcass of the deer crawls forward one step at a time, and Alan asks the servants to bring him to Thomas. The servants panic, thinking that the monster can even speak. But then Alan crawls out from it, saying that this thing is heavier than your mom. Soon, the Granville family also comes outside, and they stand speechless to see the white deer that Alan has hunted. Thomas is thrilled and tells his mother that now they will have something delicious to serve during their New Year's celebration. He runs forward to thank Alan, who dedicates the monster to him. But inside his mind, he swears never to hunt a white deer again, because it took him far too much time and gave him only 2,500 XP. Meanwhile, Lord Granville is stunned by this, and he asks his butler if they are sure that Alan has no talent because he has never heard of an 8-year-old boy hunting a C-rank monster by himself. He orders the butler to reinvestigate the matter, and he immediately gets on it. Soon after that, the butler calls Alan to his office to tell him that he is getting a promotion to better fit his abilities. He says that Alan is being promoted to a huntsman who has 2 main jobs. First, he has to hunt monsters to provide meat for the family, and second, he has to rescue any citizens who are being attacked by monsters. Alan realizes that now he is technically a hunter employed by the Baron himself, and he can freely grind while calling it his job. On top of that, the promotion comes with a big bump in his salary, and now he receives 100 silver coins per month. Alan realizes that the butler is finally thinking about saving money, because by paying him a fixed amount, he doesn't have to pay him a bigger amount per monster, since the white deer itself was worth more than 100 silver coins. However, he doesn't have a problem with this arrangement because now he only has to hunt enough monsters to provide meat for the Baron's family, and he can use the rest of his time to hunt goblins and farm experience. He accepts the position and says he will start hunting monsters full-time tomorrow, but the butler tells him to hold his horses because he isn't going to hunt every single day. He still has to act as Cecily's manservant and do his regular duties, after which he can hunt only once per week. Alan is not happy to hear this, but he still can't let this chance get away, so he humbly accepts the position. Soon, spring arrives, and with that, a giant magic ship descends on the city. Alan is out there with Cecily, who is eagerly waiting for her elder brother Mihi to return. But Alan is only curious about how the magic ship stays afloat. Soon, Mihi comes out of the ship, and Cecily runs to hug him. She starts talking about how much she missed him and then pouts because he didn't keep his promise of coming to see her over the summer break. Alan realizes that Cecily is close to her brother, and he decides to make a good first impression. He approaches Mihi and offers to carry his bags for him. Mihi is curious about the new servant. Cecily is low-key proud as she tells him that Alan has double duty as her manservant and a huntsman, and Mihi is impressed. He praises Alan, saying that he must be really talented, and Alan realizes that he is the most sensible one of the Baron's children. With that, Mihi gives Cecily a gift he bought for her in the capital, and she cheerfully takes him home to talk about his school. Seeing them like this, Alan begins to miss his family, and he wonders how his siblings are doing. Soon after that, Alan hunts some monsters for his weekly quota and takes them back to the mansion, where the chefs are really happy to get good ingredients to work with. Just then, Rick arrives there and tells Alan that Mihi is having a sparring session with Zenoff right now, and he immediately goes to see it. He finds that Mihi is quite skilled because he can keep up with the Captain of Knights, but Zenoff doesn't fight him for long and tells him that he has improved a lot since he went to the academy. Just then, Isekai'd notices Alan watching them, and she praises him for hunting delicious monsters yet again. Mihi also notices him and says that he looks strong, so he wants to spar with him too. With the approval of the Baron, Zenoff gives Alan his sword to spar against Muki, and he can't stop gushing over the fact that he gets to hold a real mithril sword. He realizes that he hasn't practiced since he left the village, and his stats are also more suited for hunting rather than fighting. But since he is at level 20 now, he has confidence in his abilities. The sparring begins, and Alan charges at Mihi, trying to control his power so that he doesn't hurt him. However, Mihi proves to be far superior to him in all aspects. Alan feels that his attacks hit like a truck, and he is faster than Alan. Mihi's mother is worried about him, but Zenoff tells her to chill because her son has trained a lot in the Academy City, and no one without enough experience can beat him. His words are proven right as Mihi disarms Alan and forces him to admit defeat, but he is impressed by his skill and strength despite his young age. Meanwhile, Alan notices that Mihi is in a separate class entirely. Cecily and Thomas head to Mihi to applaud him, and Cecily also commends Alan for enduring so long. Anyway, Mihi tells his siblings that he grew stronger after clearing a dungeon during his summer break, which was required for him to pass his exams. He explains how a dungeon is like a labyrinth with a lot of monsters, and Alan feels envious of him. He realizes that Mihi has innate talent and he studied from the finest instructors in the Academy City. He also worked really hard, and on top of that, he can level up 100 times faster than him because he is on normal difficulty. He begins feeling a little jealous of him, and as Mihi tells his siblings that he will come home again in summer vacations, Alan suddenly asks him to spar with him. Then Mihi asks him to take proper care of his sister in return for that. And although Alan agrees, he is eager to find a sensible excuse to stop serving the purple-haired brat. Soon after that, Mihi departs for the academy. A few weeks later, Viscount Carnell arrives to visit Baron Granville. And while the two of them laugh diplomatically, Granville holds a burning hatred in his eyes for the greedy bastard. Alan serves him a meat dish, and as Carnell's mouth begins watering, he remembers what Rick told him about the Viscount earlier. Rick had told him that Carnell was one rank higher than Granville in social hierarchy, and their families always been at odds with each other. Alan doesn't care too much about that, and he watches as the greedy Viscount devours the rabbit meat steak. His eyes widen in surprise on tasting it, and he remarks that it must be the rumored boar meat. Granville confirms out of spite, and Alan knows that he would never waste boar meat on this gold-clad swine. Anyway, Carnell crams his mouth with rabbit meat and asks for a second serving that Alan promptly brings. He recalls how Rick told him that Carnell's territory is on the opposite side of the White Dragon Mountains, and they are wealthy because the dragon is currently nesting toward the Granville side, and they can't mine any from the mountains. However, the dragon used to nest in Carnell's territory 100 years ago, and Alan wonders if the Granville family bullied his family at that time. Suddenly, Granville asks Carnell why he came here, and the fat bastard replies that his youngest daughter recently had her appraisal ceremony, and he is here to discuss it. Alan is curious about what his brother's talent was, but he shifts his attention to the noble's gossip. Carnell boasts that his daughter didn't have any talent, and Gran makes a displeased face that leaves Alan confused. Carnell keeps mocking Granville, saying that it is unfortunate that two of his kids have talents. Granville replies that they have to carry out their duties as nobles, no matter their circumstances. The whole incident leaves Alan with many questions, but he realizes he can't ask them of the Baron just yet. A few months later, Alan goes to meet with Raven's party on his day off, and asks them to teach him all they know about C-rank monsters. They are shocked to hear this, and Raven warns him that even capable adventurers can lose their lives against C-rank monsters. However, Alan has already become the Austrian painter for the goblins, and wiped all of them out from the forest, so he needs to hunt stronger monsters. The eye patch girl says that they need to do some shopping before that, and Alan purchases a Spider-Man cape for beginners. He goes out to hunt after that, and his hawk soon finds a C-ranked orc sleeping peacefully. He immediately sends his saber-toothed tigers to attack it, and the ambush is successful. The orc takes serious damage, but it counterattacks and takes down some of the saber-tooths. Alan doesn't pull out and keeps going in with more saber-tooths, defeating the orc after a short fight. He is happy to hunt it and get a C-rank magic stone, but he thinks that he needs to work really hard to defeat C-rank monsters without trapping them, and even more so if he wants to catch up to people like Mihi. Just then, his hawk alerts him about another C-ranked monster, and this time it is a giant armored ant. Alan tries to ambush it with his saber-tooths, but they can't penetrate the tough armor of the ant and get wiped out. Alan changes his strategy and uses a butterfly to put the monster to sleep, and then tries to stab its belly to kill it. However, its belly is also as hard as iron, and the ant wakes up sooner than he expected. Alan somehow manages to kill it after repeated attacks, and even though he gets more experience than an orc, he realizes that he needs much better equipment if he wants to beat it. He thinks that physical attacks might still not work on it, but then he realizes that his intelligence stat is high enough and maybe he can learn magic now. So he uses the gift from his 1-year manservant's anniversary to get one magic lesson alongside Cecily, who doesn't think that it is a good idea. Her teacher, however, asks Alan if he has any questions, and he jumps to the point and asks if he can cast spells. Cecily says that he doesn't have talent, so he obviously can't, but her teacher decides to test it out. He asks Alan to put his hands close to a magic crystal, and if it glows, he can cast spells. Alan has high hopes for himself, but when the crystal ball doesn't glow, he feels that his whole life was a lie and he is a loser. The danger alarms suddenly begin blaring throughout the mansion, prompting Rick to rush in and warn the Baron that a powerful monster known as Murdergall is approaching the city. Baron Grinal and his butler are stunned by the news, as the creature is infamous for being extremely dangerous. The Baron quickly orders Rick to summon Knight Captain Xenough, but the butler explains that Xenough and his soldiers are currently away on a monster hunting mission and will not return in time to deal with the threat. With no immediate military support available, Gorona decides to depend on the adventurers in the city and instructs his butler to hire them to help evacuate the citizens safely. Alan steps forward and tells the Baron that he will assist the adventurers in confronting the monster. However, Cecily strongly objects to the idea. She reminds him that the Murdergall is a terrifying beast and argues that he cannot leave her alone because he is her personal servant. In response, Alan quietly removes his bow tie and tells her that he is not only a servant but also the family's huntsman, and protecting the city from monsters is part of his responsibility. As he runs against the flow of terrified people fleeing for safety, Alan remembers that the Murdergall is classified as a B-rank monster, far stronger than anything the local adventurers can handle. Deep down, he is unsure whether he can defeat it either, especially since his mana points are completely depleted after earlier using them to farm skill X. Before long, Alan arrives at the city gate, where crowds of frightened citizens are rushing inside because the monster has already appeared. The guards prepare to shut the gate once everyone seems to be inside, but a desperate blonde merchant pleads with them to wait because his wife and daughter are still outside in their carriage. Hearing this, Alan quickly looks beyond the gate and finally sees the creature. The Murdergall is a massive blue ogre that is currently devouring a horse. After finishing its meal, it begins ripping apart the carriage where the merchant's wife and child are clinging to each other in terror. Acting instantly, Alan rushes forward and throws an iron ball straight at the monster's eye. With incredible precision, the projectile hits its target and blinds the creature in one strike. The attack distracts the monster, allowing Alan to taunt it and pull its attention away from the civilians so he can deal with it himself. Meanwhile, the guards and nearby adventurers shout at him to retreat to safety, but Alan ignores their warnings and hurls another iron ball at the monster. This time, the creature blocks the attack without any effort. Now fully focused on Alan, the beast prepares to pursue him. Realizing this is his chance, Alan shouts to the guards that he will lead the monster toward the White Dragon Mountains. Suddenly, the guards yell for him to watch out behind him. Alan turns around just in time to dodge a sudden sneak attack from the enormous monster. He immediately runs away from the city with the Murdergall chasing him, but he cannot fight yet because his MP is still 0. The monster slams the ground with an earth-shattering punch, barely missing him. Oddly enough, instead of finishing him while he is down, the creature smirks mischievously, almost as if it is playing with him and waiting for him to make the next move. Alan wonders when this turned into a turn-based RPG, but the delay allows him to check his status and realize that his MP has finally recovered. Now ready to fight, he deletes all copies of his grass-type summon and the Sabertooth, replacing them with multiple copies of the Butterfly summon to boost his agility and endurance. Using these buffs, Alan runs deeper into the forest with the monster close behind. Once he is sure no one is watching, he summons several butterflies and attempts to use their special ability to put the monster to sleep, but the attack has no effect. Thinking the dosage might be too small, he summons 3 more butterflies, but even their combined power fails. The giant monster simply slashes them apart and roars menacingly. Panic begins to set in, and Alan runs even deeper into the forest, with the monster chasing him relentlessly, more desperate to catch him than the hot single mothers in his area are for him. After several hours of running, Alan becomes completely exhausted, while the monster seems to possess endless stamina. In desperation, he dives into a dense cover of trees and manages to temporarily lose the creature. While the monster searches for him, Alan takes the chance to catch his breath and analyze the situation. None of his insect-type debuffs have worked on the monster, despite trying every option he has. He has also spent many magic stones to replace the summons he lost during the fight. On the bright side, however, he has successfully lured the monster far away from civilization. Believing his mission is complete, Alan pulls out his cape from his dimensional storage and prepares to quietly return home. But suddenly, a chill runs down his spine. When he turns around, he discovers that the monster has already found him again, and he immediately begins running away in a panic. 3 days later, Alan finally returns to the city, completely worn out. He collapses into the arms of a guard and later wakes up inside the Baron's mansion, with Cecily anxiously watching over him. The moment Alan opens his eyes and greets her, Cecily becomes teary-eyed with relief that he is alive. However, her relief quickly turns into anger, and she begins lashing out at him for recklessly risking his life. Cecily angrily scolds Alan, questioning how he could make her worry when he is only a manservant. Before the argument continues, the butler steps in and calmly asks Alan how much he remembers about the time he spent away from the city. Acting as if he is still shaken, Alan explains that the monster chased him for 3 days before he finally managed to return. The butler then escorts him to Baron Grenal so he can give a full report. Alan tells the Baron that he was unable to defeat the Murdergall and that all he could do was lead it far away from the city using every bit of strength he had. Baron Grenal is impressed by his effort, and even Xenoff acknowledges that Alan essentially carried out the responsibility of the Night Order by protecting the city while they were absent. Grenal decides that Alan deserves recognition for his bravery and rewards him with 10 gold coins, while the merchant whose family he rescued adds another 10 gold coins in gratitude. Delighted by the unexpected reward, Alan begins thinking about what equipment he should purchase. Eventually, he chooses a mithril sword worth 25 gold coins. The weapon is powerful enough to easily cut off the limbs of an armored ant, though it still cannot pierce the creature's hard armor directly. Instead, Alan can slice through the joints and retrieve the valuable magic stones from inside the monster. Later on, Alan spends some time experimenting with his abilities. He summons 3 hawks, sends one flying away, and converts the second one into a card. After that, he takes several items from his storage and places a fruit inside a bag. He asks the hawk in front of him to guess what is inside the bag, and the bird correctly identifies the fruit. While that result is expected, Alan becomes surprised when the hawk he had turned into a card also guesses correctly once it is summoned again. However, the hawk that had flown away earlier cannot figure out that the item in the bag is a fruit. Curious about this difference, Alan creates another hawk and summons it. This new bird somehow shares the knowledge of the others and immediately states that a fruit is inside the bag. To test whether this ability works across different species, Alan creates a pigeon, but the pigeon cannot answer the question at all. From this experiment, Alan realizes that creatures he creates can share information with one another, but once they are summoned individually, they lose that ability to exchange knowledge. He concludes that even if a summon dies, its knowledge can still be passed on to newly created ones, which could become a major advantage during prolonged battles. About a year later, Misop returns from the academy, and as Alan had requested earlier, the two of them decide to spar once again. Alan realizes that even after defeating more than 2,000 C-rank monsters and reaching level 28, he still cannot keep up with Misai. Misai effortlessly dodges all of Alan's attacks and eventually disarms him. Although Alan humbly accepts defeat on the outside, inside he feels extremely jealous of Mihi, and even wants to throw a tantrum when Cecily mentions that he did slightly better than last year. After the sparring match, the entire family gathers for lunch. Mihi is shocked to hear that Alan once fought a Murdergall. Alan modestly says that he didn't really fight it, while Cecily adds that he ran away like a rat for 3 days and then slept for 2 whole days after returning home. Even so, Mihi is still impressed that Alan managed to survive being chased by such a powerful monster. When his brother asks whether he could have defeated it, Mihi refuses and admits that a B-rank monster is still too much for him. Grenal encourages him to keep training until he can defeat B-rank monsters. Suddenly, a knight rushes into the room with urgent news. He reports that someone from the Adventurers Guild saw the White Dragon migrating from their territory to the lands of Viscount Carnal. Hearing this, Baron Grenal is overwhelmed with excitement. He says he has waited a long time for this moment because the dragon's departure means they can finally mine mithril again after a century. The Baron eagerly thinks about how this discovery will boost the economy of his territory. Without wasting any time, he orders Zenov to lead a team to survey the mountains and restart the mining operations. Zenov agrees, and Mihi excitedly asks if he can join them to help defeat the monsters that might appear on the way to the mines, since he currently has some free time. However, Zenov immediately rejects his request. He explains that if the White Dragon suddenly returns, the situation could become disastrous. Furthermore, they need to conduct extensive surveys before the mines can be reopened, and that process may take a long time. Months pass, and Mihi eventually agrees that he will not get the thrill of hunting monsters while staying at home. At the same time, Alan becomes worried because if the knights begin clearing all the monsters in the surrounding areas, he will lose his opportunity to farm skill X. Soon afterward, Alan's summon skill reaches level 5, which allows him to create stronger creatures. Along with that, he gains a new ability called Share. Curious to test it, Alan summons a hawk and activates the skill on it. Suddenly, his vision shifts, and he finds himself seeing the world from the hawk's point of view. He realizes that the Share skill allows him to experience the senses of his summons. To test it further, he commands the hawk to fly higher into the sky, and he is amazed when he sees a bird's-eye view of the entire forest, almost like a drone shot. He also discovers that he can communicate with the hawk through the Share skill and control it from a distance, giving commands even when it is far away. Even more impressively, Alan discovers that he can continue sharing the hawk's senses even when the bird activates its special zoom ability. Curious about the limits of this new power, he summons several additional hawks and attempts to connect with all of them at once. To his surprise, he is able to share the senses of 4 hawks simultaneously without any strain. Wanting to see if the skill works across different summons, he then calls forth a saber-tooth creature, and the connection works perfectly. However, when he summons a second saber-tooth and tries to link with it as well, a sharp pain suddenly shoots through his head, making it feel as though it is about to split apart. From this painful experience, Alan realizes that 5 connections are currently the maximum he can handle. Wondering if this limit can be increased, Alan begins checking his stats. He notices that his intelligence stat sits at 1011, which jokingly reminds him of the exact time he usually texts his crush. This observation sparks a theory in his mind. Perhaps he can share the senses of 1 summon for every 200 points of intelligence. To test this idea, he creates several D-rank bird creatures, which raises his intelligence to over 1,200. As he predicted, he now manages to stream the viewpoints of 6 different summons at the same time. Feeling proud of his clever deduction, Alan decides to experiment further with the new creatures he can summon. He calls forth all his basic summons and notices that most of them show a reasonable level of intelligence, except for Mr. Potato, who still seems rather clueless. Suddenly, Alan has a brilliant realization. Since the Share skill allows him to command his summons remotely, he can hunt monsters without personally entering the forest. To test this idea, he locates a group of armored ants and sends a D-rank spider to ensnare them in its webs. After trapping them, he orders a bear summon to attack, and the powerful creature easily crushes the ants' tough shells and defeats them. Meanwhile, a bronze shield creature blocks the ants' attacks with ease. At the same time, a D-rank fish that reminds Alan of Magikarp activates its special ability, boosting both Alan and his summons by increasing their dodge rate. Watching this coordinated attack, Alan is amazed that his summons can defeat C-rank monsters so efficiently even while he remains far from the battlefield. Afterward, Alan shifts his focus to his grass-type summon, hoping it might possess a mana-restoring ability similar to its predecessors. He instructs Potato Man to activate its skill called Crop of Magic. Immediately, the potato creature buries itself into the ground and begins sprouting a plant that soon produces a small pumpkin-like fruit. As soon as Alan grabs the fruit, his MP instantly restores to 1,000 points, making him incredibly happy because he finally has a reliable mana recovery item. After that success, Alan shifts his focus to his D-rank owl summon and discovers that it has a special ability called Night Vision, which allows it to see clearly even in complete darkness. The owl's night vision ability allows it to see clearly even in complete darkness. Realizing this, Alan understands that he now has the perfect setup to hunt monsters full-time without even leaving the city. During the day, he can use the hawk to locate monsters, and at night the owl can continue the search. Once the targets are found, the bear and spider can work together to take them down efficiently. To strengthen this system further, Alan summons the maximum number of D-rank creatures to boost his intelligence stat, which allows him to share his senses with 8 summons simultaneously. He orders them to roam the forest, find monsters, and hunt them while strictly avoiding human adventurers. He also instructs them not to fight back even if they are attacked, prioritizing secrecy above everything else. With his summons now handling the hunting, Alan suddenly realizes he has an unusual amount of free time on his hands. Then another idea comes to him. He can use the Share skill not just for hunting, but also to observe what his family and friends are doing. He immediately sends a pigeon to check on them from afar. Through its eyes, he sees Karina training alongside Dagora and Mash, while Ronan is busy working in the fields. Nearby, Sia is carefully tying his sister Ma's hair into a ponytail. Watching these simple moments fills Alan with warmth. Quietly, he leaves a gold coin by the window to help support his family from a distance. Seeing that they are doing well even without him around brings him a sense of peace and happiness. After some time passes, the Grand Val family gathers together for breakfast. Grand Val takes a moment to praise Xenof for the effort he has been putting in lately, then shifts the discussion toward the mines and asks for an update. Xenof explains that the mines were abandoned for so long that monsters settled in and claimed them as their territory. It goes further than that. The mines connect to nearby villages that once functioned as mithril refineries, and those areas have also been overrun by orcs and goblins. Based on his assessment, restoring even the nearest mine to working condition will take about 3 years. Grand Val understands the challenge, but makes it clear to Xenof what he expects moving forward. As Alan sits at the table, he quietly notices something. Grand Val appears more impatient than usual, which is out of character for him. Grand Val then changes focus and asks about the actions of Viscount Carnell during all of this. Xenof reports that the Viscount attempted to continue mining operations even while the White Dragon remained present. According to reports, every miner he sent was met with the dragon's wrath and reduced to ashes. Grand Val absorbs this information and advises Xenof that they must proceed with caution. With the Viscount's mines entirely halted, there is no predicting what he might do next. Alan takes all of this in and begins to grasp the seriousness of the situation. The knights truly intend to move through the region and eliminate the monsters. He reflects quietly. He has 2 years remaining before he turns 12, the point at which he plans to leave the Grand Val family and begin life as an adventurer. Until then, he wants to make that time meaningful by clearing out as many monsters as possible in return for everything the family has done for him. At that moment, his grimoire glows, informing him that one of his summons has just defeated an orc, granting him 15,000 experience points. He has made full use of the past 6 months, and this is the outcome of that effort. On his next day off, Alan ventures deep into the forest, commanding his summons and fully utilizing their individual strengths to cut through a large group of goblins in a short amount of time. He has already decided how to deal with them. As long as they remain, they will continue harming others, so he intends to eradicate them completely. He deploys his Teddy Squadron first to pin the goblins down, then uses them to eliminate the entire group. Shortly after, a Goblin King appears, seemingly trying to intimidate the Teddies. Alan remains completely unfazed. His bears have been trained to handle C-rank monsters without hesitation. This poses no real challenge. By the end of the fight, he had earned thousands of experience points from that battle alone. He considers it briefly and concludes it makes sense, given that he just wiped out well over 100 goblins. This will be his method going forward, moving from one orc burrow to another, clearing them out until none remain. By March of the new year, it is time for Mihi's visit. Cecil comes out to greet him, and there is an added sense of excitement this time. This is the year Mihi finally graduates, meaning he will now live with them permanently. Immediately after the greeting, Mihi gives Alan a cold stare and tells him he wants a duel. Alan accepts without hesitation. As he prepares, he feels something different this time. He is now 10 years old, meaning the restrictions on his stats have been completely lifted. This is the strongest he has ever been. If there was ever a chance to defeat Mihi, this is it, and he refuses to let it pass. Before the duel begins, both Cecil and Thomas watch Mihi closely and silently recognize that something about him feels different today. The duel starts. Alan moves at nearly double the speed he had last year, showing clear improvement. However, Mikai reads every attack perfectly, blocks each strike with precision, and at the right moment counters with a single sharp move that knocks Alan's sword from his hand. Mikai wins. Alan stands there quietly, struggling to comprehend what just happened. Despite all his training and the skills he has developed, he's still lost. He wonders if the answer lies in improving his agility or perhaps gaining a sword mastery buff to close the gap. As always, Mihi tells him he has grown stronger than last year, and this time he even had to exert enough effort to break a sweat. Alan extends his hand, but instead of taking it, Mihi walks past him to speak with his father. Granville watches his son approach and tells him plainly how proud he is of how far he has come. Cecil walks over to Alan and tells him he performed well out there, though she also points out that Mihi is still well beyond him, which is simply the truth. She then suggests that now that Mihi is home, Alan should take the opportunity to get proper sword lessons from him. Alan thinks that is a great idea. Then Mihi walks back over to the group and tells them that what he is about to share may be difficult to hear. He has a royal duty to fulfill, which means he will not be coming home anytime soon. Thomas and Cecil both ask what kind of duty it is, but Mihi tells them it is confidential. All he can say is that he has to leave tomorrow. Cecil stares at him, unable to find words. Then she turns to look at her parents, and the guilt written across both of their faces tells her everything she was not just told out loud. Mihi drops to one knee in front of Cecil and makes her a promise. He will be back in 3 years, and when he returns, they will have all the time in the world together. Alan stands there listening, and something begins to click into place. He thinks back to Granville's encounter with the Viscount and the way noble families tend to prefer children without exceptional talent. This royal duty that Mihi has been called away for is connected to all of that somehow. Alan does not have the full picture yet, but what little he can piece together does not sit well with him. The day of Mihi's departure arrives. He says his goodbyes to the family one by one. Then, just as he is about to step into his carriage, he pulls Alan aside and asks him quietly to look after Cecil while he is gone. Then he gets in, and the carriage rolls away. Alan stands there replaying those last few seconds in his head. He could have sworn that Mihi was trembling when he leaned in to speak to him, but he tells himself it was probably just his imagination. By May of the following year, Alan has worked his way through nearly every orc burrow in the surrounding area and has climbed to level 35. Now only one remains, the last one and the biggest. He coordinates his summons carefully and moves against the orc village with everything working together in sync. Suddenly, a pair of archer orcs fire at him, so Alan immediately orders his soldier Braun to shield him from the incoming attack. After that, he summons 2 spiders to ensnare the orcs in their sticky webs. After defeating the orcs, Alan enters the village. But the moment he steps inside, 200 furious orcs begin charging toward him. Seeing this, he thinks it is the perfect opportunity to farm more experience points. He immediately orders all of his summons to attack. Afterward, Alan checks his grimoire. The experience points make him light up, as the numbers are exactly what he was hoping for. Everything is going to plan, though Alan does notice one thing he was not quite expecting. The orcs are putting up a much harder fight than the goblins ever did. Then a ball of purple energy comes flying straight at him. He barely gets Braun in place in time to block it. He looks up to find the source and sees not one, but 3 mini-orc kings staring back at him. That stops him because it doesn't make sense. There is only supposed to be one. Before he can adjust, another energy ball comes screaming in from behind and wipes out a cluster of his summons in a single hit. Alan pulls out his steel balls and starts launching them at the mage orcs. One of the balls strikes an orc and kills it instantly, but the orcs are quick learners. After seeing their comrade die, the others hide from Alan's attacks and start launching their magic balls from concealed positions. Meanwhile, a magic orc manages to warn his boss about the chaos outside. After that, the orc forces send over 100 troops directly to Alan. He looks at the situation and decides that sitting back and defending is no longer an option. He needs to turn this into a war of numbers. He summons 20,000 of his teddies and unleashes them all at once. Gradually but surely, the momentum begins shifting in Alan's favor. Suddenly, the true Orc King makes its appearance. With a single blow, it wipes out several of Alan's summons as if they were insignificant. Alan sees this and finally feels the full weight of what he is facing. This is the power of a B-rank monster. He unleashes everything he has against the Orc King, calling forth summon after summon as quickly as possible. The Orc King cuts through all of them before Alan can even complete the next summon. It then focuses directly on Alan and launches an attack on him. He barely manages to block in time, but the impact drives him backward and removes a large portion of his HP. He quickly taps into his reserves to restore it, fully aware that the situation is critical. As he tries to figure out his next move, Zenith suddenly appears and asks if he is okay. Alan looks at him in shock. The knights were not expected until at least tomorrow. Zenith explains that he noticed smoke rising from the area and came to check it out. Alan glances around and is struck by the realization that Zenith has just seen all of his summons exposed. He immediately recalls and dismisses them. Zenith says nothing about it and calmly walks toward the Orc King, instructing Lebrand to handle the smaller enemies while he takes care of this one. Without hesitation, Zenith approaches the Orc King and begins deflecting every attack it throws at him, doing so effortlessly despite the creature being twice his size. At the same time, Lebrand leaps into the group of magic orcs and uses a single skill to eliminate them all without showing any strain. Alan watches in disbelief. He always knew Zenith was strong, but now he is forced to rethink everything about Lebrand as well. He begins to question how he ever lost a duel to Krina if this is the level Lebrand operates on. Moments later, Zenith finishes the fight. cutting down the Orc King in one clean strike without needing any additional skills. Alan is left quietly amazed. That night, the knights set up camp, and Alan sat beside Xenof to eat. Xenof tells him he has already figured out that Alan possesses a talent. With the number of monster corpses piling up and magic stones disappearing one after another, it was obvious. Alan hears this and realizes there is no point in denying it. He admits that he does have a talent but chooses not to reveal that he is a summoner. Xenov then adds that Granval has known for some time as well, and that this is exactly why he brought Alan in as the household's official huntsman. Alan nearly chokes on his food upon hearing this. Xenov assures him that he will keep what he saw today a secret, but in return, Alan must keep him updated on his hunting progress. Alan agrees immediately. Later, as Alan washes Xenov's back, he notices the many scars covering it. Old injuries that never properly healed, even after all the leveling Xenov must have gone through. Alan studies them and quietly wonders how Xenov is still standing after everything those scars represent. About 2 weeks later, Alan finally determines the best strategy. He now knows exactly how to clear an entire orc burrow without taking a single hit while minimizing the loss of his summons. After clearing one, he checks his grimoire, more than 335,000 experience points. He allows himself a moment of satisfaction. Then, on an afternoon in September later that year, 2 messengers arrive at the estate and deliver a letter to Grand Val. The man informs him that Mihi has died. He adds that his son fulfilled his noble duty faithfully but lost his life in the process. Grand Val's composure breaks. This was never how things were supposed to happen. He believes Mihi was treated as nothing more than expendable, sent into danger knowing that a family of their rank could not resist. The messenger tells Grand Val he will relay his concerns to the king, but Grand Val refuses. The messenger states he has other deliveries to make and leaves. Alan sits with the news, his thoughts drifting back to the day Mihi departed. He begins to wonder if Mihi already knew he would never return. Cecil suffers a small breakdown and asks her father what is going on. Grand Val asks everyone except Cecil to leave, saying he will tell her the truth. Outside in the hallway, the maids and servants are already quietly crying. Mihi meant something to all of them. Inside, Grand Val begins explaining to Cecil that Mihi understood what he was facing, that nobles with talent carry a duty they cannot refuse, regardless of the cost. Cecil does not wait to hear more. She completely breaks down and runs out in tears before he can finish. Alan watches her leave, still unable to fully comprehend what kind of system demands such sacrifices from its people, or what compels talented nobles to walk willingly toward their own deaths. Later that afternoon, Alan and Rickle sit together eating, both of them still heavy with the grief of the day. Then the maids start to notice that Cecil is missing. Nobody can find her anywhere, so the whole mansion begins to search. Alan moves quickly through the estate and notices that her window is open. She climbed down from it and left on her own. He tells Granville he'll look for her, so he takes off running immediately and makes a silent promise to himself he is going to find her, and he is going to find her before she does something she cannot take back. Meanwhile, Cecil walks through the town in a daze. She is still shaken by the loss of her brother Mihi. Then, after a little while, she remembers the last letter he sent to their family. In it, he said he was afraid for his life during his mission, but he still had a duty to fulfill. Thinking about this makes Cecil break down in tears, but what she does not know is that Alan has been watching everything through his owl summon. He then approaches her. Cecil assumes he came to drag her back home, but Alan tells her he is simply there to wait on her as always, since that is his role as her manservant. Alan stands quietly for a while. The silence begins to irritate Cecil, and she tells him to just go home. At that moment, her stomach growls. Alan opens his grimoire storage and takes out some ingredients. He quickly prepares a simple meal for her. As Cecil eats, she starts crying again. She tells Alan that Mihi was very strong and never lost to anyone, so she cannot understand how he died so easily. She then admits that she is afraid she might end up the same way. Her fear overwhelms her, and she cries even harder. To distract her, Alan suggests that they could leave everything behind and run away together, living peacefully and exploring the world. Cecil is shocked and asks if he has lost his mind. She says that the idea is not realistic. Alan then suggests a different plan. He says they can wait until next year. By then, they will both be 12 years old and able to register as adventurers. Even so, Cecil still doubts it will work. She says she will likely be enrolled in the academy by then. Alan tells her that it is her life, and she has the right to decide what she wants. If she does not want to go to the academy, she does not have to. She should choose her own path. Cecil goes quiet after hearing this. She thinks about what Mihi would have done in her situation. After a moment, she tells Alan that they should go home. Alan agrees, but before going, Cecil tells him that her legs are tired, so she orders him to carry her all the way home. He lifts her and starts walking back. As he carries her back, Cecil thanks him for helping her feel a little better. By the time they return to the mansion, Granbell and the rest of the family rush to Cecil. Instead of scolding her, Granbell tells her not to worry because he will make sure she does not share Mihi's fate. He explains his plan. Since they will soon be able to mine mithril again, they can offer mining rights to the royal family. In return, they could get Cecil exempted from her duties as a noble. Hearing this, Alan finally understands why Granbell was so desperate to restart the mines. However, Cecil surprises everyone. She says she will not run from her responsibility. As a member of the Granbell family, she will fulfill her duty as a noble. Everyone is shocked by her decision. 6 months later, Alan is out in the wild and has just obtained a B-rank magic stone. He reflects on how half a year has passed since Mihi's death and how life in the Granbell household has mostly returned to normal. Most of the knights have cleared out the orc territories, though Alan and his team handled most of the difficult work. Because of this, preparations for mining have progressed quickly. Zenev estimates that the mines will be fully operational by summer. Alan believes this will ease Granbell's worries for now. However, Granbell is still concerned about Carnell. Since losing access to mithril, Carnell has been unusually quiet. Granbell suspects that he may act soon, so he advises everyone to stay alert. Alan continues his hunting and climbs to the top of a mountain. There, he discovers a nest of armored ants. He realizes they could become a problem for the mithril miners, so he decides to eliminate them. At first, he considers forming a careful plan. Alan has heard about armored ant nests before, and there should be over 1,000 soldiers inside, along with a B-rank queen ant that lays eggs to produce even more. However, he quickly realizes that he does not have enough information about them. Instead, he decides to act without a detailed strategy. He summons his creatures and begins attacking the nest. Since his summons are strong, he expects the task to be quick. However, even after 1 month, the ants are still not fully wiped out. Alan starts to suspect that the queen ant is constantly producing new ants to replace the ones he kills. Although he gains a lot of XP from defeating them, their constant return becomes a serious problem. It prevents him from making progress deeper into the nest. Alan realizes he needs to change his approach, or he will never reach the cave. Another month passes. By now, he has killed over 5,000 ants and is starting to lose patience, yet they keep coming back. Then suddenly the ants stop appearing. Alan notices this and concludes that his persistence has finally paid off. He quickly moves closer and sends an owl summon into the cave. Then he activates shared vision and looks through its eyes, searching for the queen armored ant. However, each attempt fails. He either finds egg chambers or gets ambushed by more ants. After another unproductive day, Alan starts to think he will not find anything. But then unexpectedly, he finally discovers the queen armored ant. When Alan enters her chamber, he is shocked by its size. It is about 3 times larger than a normal ant. Alan immediately sends in his summons to deal with the smaller ants. Once they are cleared out, only the queen remains. He orders his summons to attack, but the queen easily knocks them away. Seeing this, Alan decides to overwhelm it with numbers. He summons more creatures and sends them to attack the queen's abdomen. They keep biting and damaging it repeatedly. The damage builds up until the queen can no longer endure it and she finally dies. At that moment, Alan's grimoire lights up. It informs him that he has defeated the queen armored ant and gained over 45,000 XP. It is already too late to return to town, so he decides to stay there for the night. While looking around the area, he discovers something unexpected. He finds mithril ore inside the cave. The next day, Alan returns to the mansion with the queen ant's exoskeleton. He expects a strong reaction, but to his surprise, Granbell and the others do not seem impressed. Granbell says he finds it hard to believe that Alan could defeat an entire ant colony by himself, including the queen. Zenev agrees, pointing out that even trained knights would struggle to handle such a task. To prove it, Alan reaches into his bag and takes out the mithril ore he found. As soon as they see it, Granbell and Zenev are shocked. This confirms that Alan really went into White Dragon Mountain and cleared the ant colony. Granbell immediately demands a full explanation of what happened. Cecil watches this and realizes that Alan was telling the truth all along. After Alan explains in detail how and where he found the mithril, it becomes clear that he has discovered a new 5th vein for mining. As a reward, Granbell forgives him for staying out overnight without permission. He also says that since Alan found the vein, he deserves a share in it. Granbell offers him 30% of the mining rights. Alan is confused and does not fully understand what that means. Sibba speaks up and tells him he will understand the benefits in a few years. Later that year in October, Alan turns 12. Work on the mithril mines resumes after being inactive for centuries. However, the new vein Alan discovered will not be mined until the following year. Alan reflects on his situation. He has already cleared the surrounding areas of dangerous monsters, so there is little threat nearby. He also no longer has to worry about money because of his share in the mines. Even so, this does not sit well with him. He prefers a more challenging life and does not enjoy staying comfortable for too long. At that moment, Rickle arrives and informs him that a royal messenger has come. Alan wonders what the matter could be. Everyone gathers in the dining room. Alan notices that the situation is serious, especially since Viscount Carnell is also present. Gronbell asks the messenger why they have come. The messenger explains that the Carnell territory has suffered heavy losses in mithril production since the White Dragon moved into their region. Because of this, they have brought a proposal. Gronbell reads the document and is shocked. The proposal is to jointly manage the White Dragon Mountains. The messenger confirms this and says the contract was personally prepared by the Vice Minister of Justice. He also says that Viscount Carnell has already signed it, so only Granbell's approval is needed. Granbell clearly thinks the idea is unreasonable, but he remains calm. He says he will first travel to the royal capital to review the situation. The messenger becomes aggressive when Granbell does not agree immediately. He storms out and warns Granbell that he will regret this decision. After they leave, Granbell grips the contract in frustration. He says it is unfair that after losing access to the mines for a century, others now want to claim half of it. Granbell asks whether Xenof is still at the White Dragon Mountains, and Cebus confirms that he is, adding that he will return within 2 days. So, Granbell decides they will go to the royal capital once Xenof returns to settle the matter. Later, while Alan and the other servants are discussing the situation, they suddenly hear loud screams from upstairs. Alan runs up immediately and finds bandits trying to abduct Cecil. Granbell is informed and is shocked by the situation. Alan draws his mithril sword and starts fighting the bandits. However, they are stronger than he expected. He uses buffs to increase his strength and speed. The bandits notice this and throw a gas grenade. The gas knocks Alan unconscious. A few hours later, Alan wakes up beside Cecil. She is tied up, and he soon realizes that he is also tied up. However, as a summoner, he can still fight even while restrained. He summons Chappie and uses shared vision to scout the area. He discovers they are inside a large space that looks like a warehouse, with the kidnappers nearby. A man named Dagra enters the room and asks why Alan was taken as well. One of the bandits tries to explain, but Dagra punches him in the gut and reminds him that he is in charge. Before leaving, he orders them to kill Alan if he causes trouble. After Dagra leaves, Alan overhears the bandits talking. They talk about how there is some sort of war going on and that Xenof is their biggest concern because of his strength. Alan realizes waiting for rescue is not a good option. He decides to act. He tries to reach for his weapon but realizes he dropped his mithril sword earlier. He also understands that fighting while protecting Cecil will be difficult without it. So he decides to gather more information first. Using Chappie, he scouts further and discovers they are not in a warehouse but on a large magical airship. The ship is big enough to even have a restaurant. He also confirms that Viscount Carnell and the royal messenger are involved. He overhears Carnell talking about using Cecil as a hostage to gain control over the mining rights. At that moment, Cecil wakes up and begins to struggle. The kidnappers consider hitting her to keep her quiet. Alan realizes he cannot wait any longer. He summons Papillion and uses it to put one of the kidnappers to sleep. Then he breaks free from his restraints, stands up, and prepares to deliver some payback. Alan wastes no time, immediately springing into action. Using his summons together with his martial arts, he swiftly takes down the thugs within seconds. But just as he moves to free Cecil, Dagra notices him, teleports right in front of him, and sends him flying with a kick. Dagra slowly approaches Alan and questions why he looks so shocked by the teleportation, as if he has never seen a skill before. Alan does not understand what he means by skill. Regardless, the situation is clearly turning dire for him. Just as Dagra steps forward to finish him, Alan's bird summon mimics the voice of Viscount Carnell, catching Dagra off guard and giving Alan the chance he needs. He uses his spider summons to bind Dagra tightly in silk while escaping with Cecil. Dagra struggles with all his strength to break free, but it proves useless. Alan then places protective summons to block the path in case Dagra manages to escape. Carrying Cecil, Alan rushes through the hallway until he finds a window. Despite it being extremely high, around 100 meters above the ground, he tells Cecil they have no choice but to jump. Judging by her expression, she clearly thinks it is a terrible idea. However, Alan believes he can survive by pushing his endurance to the limit. Without hesitation, he leaps from the airship with Cecil in his arms, but the impact is far harsher than he anticipated. Cecil remains unharmed, but Alan suffers from 2 broken legs. Fortunately, he quickly uses Muller's flower to heal himself. Once recovered, he tells Cecil they are heading back home, but she immediately stands up and bombards him with questions, asking how he became so strong and where he got those monsters. Alan brushes it off, saying there is no time to explain since the people from the ship might pursue them. She climbs onto his back, and Alan dashes toward the Grandval estate. Using his owl summons to scout, Alan spots Dagra and Carnell steering the ship directly toward him. He begins changing routes repeatedly, trying to lose them. He realizes Dagra is using tracking magic, but luckily it only follows footprints. So Alan jumps onto rooftops, moving across them until they reach the city walls. Checking again through his summoner's vision, he sees Dagra still searching the streets, convincing him they have shaken him off. Alan then tells Cecil they must leave the city and head toward the border checkpoint of the Grandval Fife near the northern edge of the White Dragon Mountains. Though it will take several days, both agree it is the best option. To avoid leaving tracks, Alan uses his protection summons, leaping across their shields. That night, they camp, and Cecil asks why he never revealed his talent. Alan simply replies that nothing good comes from exposing it. She understands and falls asleep. The next day, they continue, and Alan assumes they are far from Carnell City. But upon checking, he sees Dagra still searching along the outer walls, steadily advancing. Realizing the danger, Alan continues using his summoned shields to avoid leaving footprints, even though it slows them down. After a day and a half, they finally reach the Grandval border checkpoint, where the knights are relieved to see them safe. However, Alan suddenly sees through his summon that Dagra has found their tracks. Without hesitation, he grabs Cecil and runs again. After explaining the situation, Cecil questions why they fled instead of staying with the knights. Alan tells her the checkpoint lacks the strength to face someone like Dagra. Still, he reassures her that at their current pace, Dagra will not catch up. He also reminds her that before Mihi left on his last mission, he made a promise to protect her at all costs, and he intends to keep it. Hearing this, Cecil breaks into tears and thanks him. They continue traveling the next day, expecting to reach the Grandval estate by tomorrow. Suddenly, Hawkins senses something behind them. A murder girl is pursuing them. Alan quickly realizes it is the same one he fought 3 years ago. After considering his options, he decides the best course is to defeat it here and now. He turns to face it while Cecil hides behind a rock. This time, his plan is to unleash all his strongest attacks at once. He sends his most powerful summons to distract it and hurls a metal ball, but the murder gal has adapted since their last encounter. It blocks the attack and effortlessly wipes out every summon he throws at it. It then leaps close to Alan and grabs him with both hands, lifts him into the air, and drops him straight into its mouth. Cecil watches in disbelief, thinking Alan has just been bitten in two, but even caught between the murder gal's teeth, Alan is still alive. Just before he was picked up, he poured every last stat he had into endurance and HP, and that is the only reason he is still breathing. He then summons his electrolade and drives it straight into the murder gal's eye, sending a powerful surge of energy through it that kills it for good. His grimoire lights up to let him know he just earned 82,000 XP for the kill. Cecil runs over and throws her arms around Alan with tears streaming down her face, telling him she genuinely thought he was gone. Alan tells her it is not a big deal since he used the healing leaves to recover, but that aside, they are still not safe. So he tells her they need to keep moving before Dagra catches up. But it is already too late for that as Dagra is standing right behind them. Dagra yells over to them, telling Alan that he made it a nightmare to track them down, and that he is going to pay for that. Alan tells Cecil to stay back while he handles this, but he is immediately sent flying because Dagra is just that fast. Alan is already running on empty from the fight with the murder gal and can barely even get back on his feet. Dagra slowly walks toward Alan and raises his sword, telling him he is going to make his death as painful as possible. But just before he can follow through, an unexpected fireball cuts in and stops him. Alan looks back and is stunned to see it came from Cecil, making this the very first spell she has ever cast, but Dagra just gets angry about it and backhands her across the face. He tells her how much he would love to finish her off, fuck too, but he cannot because he still needs her as a hostage. He then turns back to Alan and is about to land the final blow when he notices that Alan is smiling about something. That is when Xenoph walks in, out of nowhere. It turns out Alan had sent his bird summon to alert Zen of the moment they left the border checkpoint. So now that Xenoph is here, Alan lets himself relax. Dagra stands across from Xenoph and makes no secret of the fact that he hates knights, so he immediately lunges forward and drives his sword straight into Xenoph's chest, but to everyone's shock, it does absolutely nothing. Alan watches this and figures that knights must carry an insane amount of defense. In response, Zenov simply lets loose his forbidden technique, the Aura Slash, which releases a tremendous burst of force that cuts Dagra clean in two and finishes him off for good. After that, they all make their way back to the estate, where everyone is overjoyed to see that Cecil and Alan made it home safely. Not long after, they sit down for a meeting where Alan lays out that he is certain Viscount Carnell is the one behind all of this, and that his plan was to take Cecil hostage in order to force Granval into giving up his rights to the new Mythal Mines. Granval hears this and immediately tells Sebus to get a carriage ready because they are heading to the royal capital right now to report everything. But Alan does not think that is the best move. Going that route would mean the royal messenger who was mixed up in all of this would walk away without facing any consequences. Instead, Alan puts forward a different idea. He will give up the mining rights that Granval handed him the other day and use that as a bargaining chip to persuade the king to launch a full investigation and bring the matter to a proper resolution. Alan knows this is technically bribery and means Granval is going to have to get his hands dirty, but Alan believes that is exactly what it is going to take to keep him and his family safe. Cybus immediately speaks up and tells Alan that he is completely out of line, but Granval stops him and says that Alan has a point and that they are going to go with his idea. A little while after that, the king was informed about Cecil's kidnapping, and all those responsible were brought to justice. The Carnell fief was then shut down and placed under royal rule. In light of what Alan and Cecil went through, Granval granted them both permission to attend a lecture covering the details of a noble's duty. The old man tells them that nothing they hear today should leave this room. They are given information about the continent they live in. Their kingdom is called Ratash, while the continent to the north of them belongs to the Empire of Geot. Although their kingdom has been invaded by the Jimitan kingdom before, the two are currently at peace. The true timeline is known as the Demon Lord history, which began on the Forgotten Continent, where the Demon Lord first appeared 112 years ago. Back then, the Demon Lord wanted to rule over everything and demanded that the leader of every country bow down to him. And as expected, not a single one agreed. Then, 55 years after that, they went through what became known as the Great Calamity, where every monster across the kingdom jumped up by one rank, and the Demon Lord finally went on the offensive, invading the central continent with an army of millions of monsters, all ranked B and above. Many people lost their lives during that period, and 4 countries were wiped out in just a few short years. Faced with that level of threat, the Empire of Jutot stepped up to form a 5-continent alliance and called for each country to set up an academy. Any child born with a talent would go through training, and when the time came, they would be sent to the front lines. However, even that was not enough to stop the Demon Lord's push, and more of the population continued to be wiped out. That all changed when a hero named Helios was born into the Empire and gave humanity something to hold on to again. Helios was the first person ever born with a hero class, and after he entered battle at the age of 15, the tide of the war began to shift. He was able to take back all the lost land in just 5 years. Alan recalls that when he was choosing his class, both Hero and Demon Lord had a 5-star difficulty, which means those 2 classes can determine the fate of the world. The old man explains that the Kingdom of Ratash then put out the Land Reclamation Decree to provide support in the war effort. Alan thinks it over and realizes that it explains the purpose of the frontier village he was born in, and also why the Baron was always pushing for so much boar meat despite his otherwise frugal way of living. It all finally makes sense to him. On top of that, the elder adds that what people refer to as the noble's duty is essentially a draft that applies to any member of the nobility or royalty born with a talent requiring 3 years of military service. With that, both Cecil and Alan now fully understand the chain of events that led to Mihi's death. A couple of months later, in November, Granval thanks Alan for everything he has done for him and tells him he has some money set aside for him. However, Alan realizes that instead of a single pouch, there are actually 3 bags of money placed before him. Granval explains that he attempted to have Cecil exempted from her noble obligations, but her exceptional talent as a wizard was deemed far too important, and his request was denied. Since Alan is strong and possesses a talent of his own, he qualifies to attend the academy. Therefore, Granval asks Alan to take the 600 gold coins, accompany Cecil to the academy, and act as her protector during battles. Upon hearing this, Alan finally decides to be honest with Granval and reveals that he is a summoner. He vows to do everything he can to ensure Cecil's safety, but he also requests some adjustments to the agreement. In return for 400 gold coins, he asks that both his family and Krina's family be exempted from the head tax. Additionally, he formally resigns from his position as a manservant, meaning he will act independently while still protecting Cecil. Granval listens carefully and tells him he had already anticipated this. He then gestures to Sebus, who brings forward a finely crafted dagger and hands it to Alan. Grand Val explains that he has recently been elevated to the rank of Viscount, and Alan played a significant role in that achievement. The dagger now in Alan's possession represents his status as an honored guest of the Grand Val family. It signifies that the Grand Val family will always support him and that he will always have a place with them, regardless of the circumstances he faces. Alan gazes at the dagger, fully realizing that this moment marks the conclusion of everything built over the past 12 years. One question that had always lingered in his mind was why he had been reincarnated into this world instead of simply transported to it. But now, he feels he finally understands. Being born into serfdom led him to hunting, which eventually guided him into serving a baron. Without those experiences, he would never have developed the skills necessary to attend the academy or stand against the Demon Lord. He concludes that this also explains the existence of HELLMODE. Elmo was searching for someone like him, someone capable of enduring the harsh reality of being reborn with nothing. And since the Demon Lord still remains a threat even after the hero's arrival, they require him, a summoner, to help restore balance. With this realization, Alan meets Grand Val's gaze and accepts his proposal,